The real-life examples of why work smarter, not harder, is the way to go. I was working as a stock boy in a supermarket, and when we had to fill the milk cooler, people would bust open a 12-pack of milk cartons and put them in one by one. On my first story, I just placed the 12-pack in the cooler and cut the plastic off on one side with my box cutter and yanked it from under it, and the look of my store manager and the other employee who was training me was pure bewilderment. From that day, everyone did it my way. Start of lockdown, my 9-year-old son was having worksheets emailed to complete at home. One day I left him at the laptop doing his maths while I made some dinner with my 3-year-old daughter. I walked into the living room with his dinner to find him asking Alexa all of his maths questions. I mean, I respected his hustle, but he was actually doing it the least efficient way possible. He memorized the equation he needed to ask, say 327 times 8, walked over to Alexa, asked her the equation, walked back to the laptop, walked back to Alexa to ask her again because he'd forgotten the last 2 digits, walked back to the laptop, entered the answer, walked back to Alexa to check it again. He had to keep walking backwards and forwards because he knew it was cheating, so he'd turned the volume down so I wouldn't hear it from the next room. So while he thought he was being clever, he was actually taking more time to figure the answer out using the Alexa than it would have taken to do it himself. Plus, of course, there's the fact he was working on a laptop that has a calculator and a Cortana assistant that does the same exact thing as Alexa, and he knows how to use both the calculator and Cortana, but still chooses to cheat in the least efficient way possible. So yeah, if he's going to be a cheater, he needs to at least make it less work than just doing the math. Worked as a laborer at a plant nursery one summer. Daily tasks included manually watering 15,000 plants each day, put together a back-of-the-napkin plan to build an irrigation system, and I spent the next few weeks building it up with some money from the boss. That system is still running 15 years later and does all of the work now. I did automate myself out of the job and had to find another eventually. A couple of years later, I got my engineering degree. I'm convinced engineers are inherently lazy people that will spend a disproportionate effort to make things easier. That is precisely what engineering is. The narrator missed his calling, at least in terms of laziness. I'm actually not mathematically gifted enough to even pass high school advanced maths, so I could only really pass the lazy criteria. My brother-in-law spent a whole summer trying to figure out how to fix his sagging deck at the lake, which he could in theory crawl under and jack it up. It would have been a tunneling project. It's a 60 by 60 area, all long 2 by 6 boards. Massive. I sat there long enough with enough beers in me to come up with the idea of just cutting a square out of the sagging area about 3 foot by 3 foot, jacking it up and then re-screwing down the boards. He paints the thing every spring with a roller anyhow, so it's not like the square cut shows up. He thought I was a genius. I was just lazy. We had to hold a thermometer in water in chemistry class. It was probably only a 20-minute experiment, but your arms got tired after a couple, and you can't let the thermometer touch the bottom of the pan or it won't get an accurate reading. So instead of sucking it up and just holding the thermometer, my lab partner built a contraption out of lab books and paper clips to somehow hold the thermometer in the water without it touching the bottom. It was the stupidest looking thing you've ever seen in a lab class, and our professor even walked over and said, "If it looks stupid, sounds stupid, but it works, then it isn't stupid." My lab partner and I joke that he wasn't talking about the contraption, but the intellect of my lab partner. I had a math teacher that actively encouraged his students to be as lazy as possible, defining lazy as actively searching for ways to do as minimal work as possible. His logic was that, the way math is now, it could be simplified and still work the same. Someone just needs to be lazy enough to find it. I was a paid intern at a large company during one summer back home from college. My work 95% consisted of using SAP, import to Excel, clean data and generate reports, occasionally creating some tools that someone needed. In the first 2 weeks after getting a hang of my responsibilities, writing all of the Excel formulas needed and basically automating 99% of my work, I was chilling. I went from actually working from 9 to 5 to maybe 1 hour tops per day. Finding, importing, cleaning, and reporting usually took hours, but with all the formulas, it took 2 minutes of clicking. I then helped the other cool intern get his crap set up so that we could both just chill. We could take 2-hour lunches, paid for by the company, and nobody said anything because we were just getting so much more done than the other interns. Of course, I helped for special tasks when asked, but those were simple 20-minute tasks building something in Excel. Overall, it was the easiest, most stress-free internship of my life. The clerk was asked to bring 145 white papers into the office. He doesn't want to count the paper manually, so he printed 145 blank sheets and took them in. Smart! He used a machine that counts as one of its functions, but not the primary function to do the counting for him. It's just enough outside the box that most people wouldn't think to do it at all. Plus, as a bonus, they're all nice and warm. One of my favorite examples is Andy Kim, and I'd like to preface this by saying I don't think Kim is lazy so much as a genius. Andrew Kim was a singer/songwriter who became famous under the stage name Andy Kim. He achieved success writing songs for bands like the Archies, possibly most notably Sugar Sugar. After his success, he coasted for a while until his record label dropped him for a lack of output. At that point, he created his own label and cranked out hits like Rock Me Gently. When they saw this, the big record labels then bought his label under the assumption that they'd then profit off the songs he wrote and performed. He then very shortly stopped writing songs and largely lived off the sale of his label. Work smarter, not harder. It took me like 3 months, but I automated a data pipeline to extract data, clean it up and spit it out in an Excel or PDF format to one of our clients. I walked over to shoot the breeze with a lady who handles my client and gives me the tasks, and she told me we make $40K off them every month for that automated job. I was like, frick, I need to go start my own business. When Carl Friedrich Gauss, the famous German mathematician and physicist, was in elementary school, around 1784, his class was assigned the busy work task of adding all the numbers from 1 to 100, 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 and so on. This usually kept the class quiet for half an hour or so. 7-year-old Carl was sitting quietly with the correct answer, 5,050, while the rest of the class was just starting. So the surprised teacher asked him how he came up with the solution. He replied that he added 1 and 100 and got 101. Then he added 2 and 99 and got 101, 3 plus 98, and so on. He realized that there was a pattern of 50 pairs of numbers with each pair adding up to 101, and 50 times 101 equaled 5,050. When I was in college, I had a job at an Italian fast food place with a reputation for its breadsticks. They came in frozen and needed a bit of time to thaw, so we'd take a giant 3x4-foot aluminium baking sheet, spread them out in a single layer with no spaces and cover it with a plastic bag, and then leave it to sit in the walk-in overnight. The next day you'd have to get a pair of tongs and move each stick to a new tray, turning them over and then cover the new tray with the bag and let them sit on racks for a couple of hours before brushing on the garlic butter sauce. This was tedious enough that you'd usually be ready to brush the butter on the first tray as soon as you turned the last tray. I was given this task for the first time one morning and just didn't want to deal with it. I realized that if I put the second tray upside down on top of the first one and then turned it over and took the first tray out, I got exactly the same result. Blew the boss's mind when I did the 3-hour job in about 15 minutes. I was given a 5-cent an hour raise. I mean, on the one hand, good on them for actually giving out an immediate reward in recognition. On the other hand, yay, 5 cents. I guess we'll have 40 more cents for gas money after the shift. I was once set to test a certain piece of equipment on a ship. The test involved attaching the unit to a reader, then run loads of command line commands. Then one would have to make a copy of all the text, copy it into Word and save it as a real crappy-looking report. There were hundreds of units and they needed to be tested several times a year. We did about 20 to 30 a day. It would take several weeks to finish. I didn't know coding at the time, but always wanted to learn it. Within 2 months, I'd made a program, even with a GUI, to spot faults with ease instead of having to actually read the reports. The program could read 3 units at a time and would automatically create a smooth PDF report and save it on our server, named with a serial number and date. The job was now to attach 3 units, then wait for about 3 minutes, detach and attach new ones. Basically 30 seconds of work, 3 minutes break. I could now test all units in a day, though I'd typically spread it out over a couple of days. When I left the company, I left the program on the test computer. I got an email from an ex-colleague a few months later saying they were using the program on several ships now. There wasn't any manual for the program, of course, but it was so straightforward that it wasn't needed. If I need directions, I'm not asking a man with 1 tooth. I'm asking a man with 1 leg. 'Cause he definitely knows the easiest way to get there. Yep, if there's a shortcut, that 1-legged son of a bee knows where it is. You won't be hopping fences, either. I plug clocks in at midnight so they're already set. In other news, I'm exhausted. Eating dinner out the pot so there's fewer dishes to wash. An older company had a person dedicated to data entry, which boiled down to copying and pasting portions of data from text files into spreadsheets and formatting into a report. The person originally doing this job spent a full 40 hours plus a week doing it, but wasn't very computer literate. When they retired, the company hired someone with actual skills. The new hire convinced management to let her work remotely after getting up to speed on the job. The first week at home was spent automating the entire job. The remainder of their multi-year tenure with the company was spent doing whatever they wanted, save the 10 to 15 minutes weekly to run their program and to answer the odd email here and there, all while getting paid full salary and benefits. They actually had to add in a few errors now and then to make it seem realistic. I've worked a few places that have people doing this. Usually when they retire, the job is given to some younger person that figures out how to do it in 10 minutes on top of the rest of their normal job. Your lady scored. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? I worked goods in for an aircraft manufacturer as a summer job at university. Parts would arrive, we'd open them and key in all of the details into a terminal. That bit was a bit long-winded. I discovered the terminal keyboard has assignable shortcuts and set up a bunch of them for all the boilerplate such that keying an item in was about 6 keystrokes. Saved myself and my workmate hours every day, which we'd spend pranking each other, other warehouse staff, and staff at other sites. You made yourself more efficient and used the extra time to make your colleagues less efficient? Perfectly balanced, as all things should be. I had a manager in my 20s who detested the fact that I turned a 2-hour process into a 15-minute process. It exposed how much lazier he was compared to me, because when the higher-ups learned from other people at my level that I created the program, they took me aside and told me he took credit for it. They asked me how I felt about that. I told them what decisions they make regarding the manager's character is their decision. Just put yourselves in my shoes and consider it from that angle. They did nothing, and I took the concept to a competitor who invested the money into making the program more robust and proprietary. My name was line 1 on the patent and trademark documents, and I did well enough to semi-retire at 45. I credit Lee Lakosha for the inspiration. He went through a similar problem with higher-ups at Ford, and his answer was to take his brain to Chrysler, who valued it. Worked in a local adult education center. One of my main tasks was to make calculations about how many people enlisted for a course, how many of them got discounts for being unemployed or disabled, how many men, women, or particular age groups and stuff. It was all needed to calculate upcoming courses fees. That was my only work there, and I hated it. This was in the early 90s, so PCs were a thing in our offices, but I had no idea how to write a program or use a database to use this information. Lucky as I am, our center had an interesting policy. When you want to educate yourself, you can attend that class for free. And when it's during the work time, then this is work time, as long as my supervisor is okay with that. And she was. So I spent 3 months studying database structures, scripting and coding and stuff. I told my tutor what I wanted to do, and he helped me write a script that grabs all necessary information from the course's database, copies that into another database, and then I went crazy and wrote code that was insane. I implemented what-if scenarios thanks to filters. At the end, I was able to do my work, that previously needed 6 hours a day, within 15 minutes. I mean, before that, it took like an hour to gather all of the necessary information to have a how many unemployed single-parent women does it need to make the costs of that course. I had to comb the data for everything back then. After my education, if you wanted statistics on how many single-parent disabled foreign women at the age of 80 to 90 are needed for the next 2 years to keep the ornithology course running, sure, no problem. Clickety-click and done. After that, I started the PC in the morning, grabbed all of the data, ran my script, and was done within 15 minutes, and then read the book I'd bought from home. At the end of the day, I gave my supervisor several dozens of paper, statistics, predictions and stuff and said, "Whew, boy, that was a lot of work," and I went home. My supervisor was super happy with me because I did so much more now and was super effective. So there are, as far as I know, a lot of jobs that are essentially copy-paste and counting roles, at least when I was still looking at that sort of admin work in the late 2010s. And apparently the tech to make it into a comparatively effortless task has been available as early as the 90s? Earlier, perhaps? How have we stayed this dumb about this particular sort of work for so long? Eesh, I wish I'd gotten into even relatively simple programming when I was younger now. Back in high school, a lot of kids used to walk through this park to get home and to school. A portion of the path went into the woods because it was just quicker than walking the actual trail. At one point in the walk through the woods, you had to go up this small but tedious hill. Nothing major, but it took like 10 seconds of hard work to go up it. You couldn't go around because one side was a small cliff to the creek below and the other side had dense trees. One summer, a bunch of us got together and decided to just dig through that hill to make it flat. It took like 14 of us 3 good days to get through it. It was a hard 3 days, but it was definitely worth it. Saved 10 seconds of hill climbing every morning and afternoon, 150 plus days of the year. And it wasn't just us, but hundreds of other kids who took the same path every day. Sometimes you need to put in a lot of work so your future selves can enjoy the easy way out. I was invited to my friend's yearly apple picking. It was a full day of apples and kids and filling a truck for cider. I'm lazy and suggested we make the process more efficient with tarps on the ground. We managed in 2 hours what historically took all day. We didn't even get to the picnic lunch. Essentially, I ruined apple picking. Walkie-talkies. In every job I've ever had, these things make your day a far less labor-intensive task if used correctly. Good God, I wish we had these things. Spent 20 minutes of my coffee break at 3 a.m. trying to call the plant in an area with next to no service so they could let me in the building because my dumb self left my wallet inside. Didn't get my coffee either. In Australia, explorers discovered a mountain that was taller than Mount Kosciuszko, which was thought to be the tallest mountain in Australia. Rather than cause confusion by telling everyone a new tallest mountain had been found, they simply named the new mountain Mount Kosciuszko and renamed the original to something else. The German general Kurt von Hammerstein-Eckward used Hanlon's razor to assess his men, saying, "I divide my officers into 4 groups. There are clever, diligent, stupid, and lazy officers. Usually 2 characteristics are combined. Some are clever and diligent. That places the general staff. The next lot are stupid and lazy. They make up about 90% of every army and are suited to routine duties. Anyone who is both clever and lazy is qualified for the highest leadership duties because he possesses the intellectual clarity and the composure necessary for difficult decisions. One must beware of anyone who's stupid and diligent. He must not be entrusted with any responsibility because he'll always cause only mischief." I have a massive exercise to do at our year end. I work in accounting. My work previously got checked by another manager who spent over 3 weeks going over the data. Eventually, she got shifted into another department, and that workload fell on me. Basically, self-audit and then present the data to the actual auditors. My previous manager was absolutely crap at Excel. I didn't let on, but I did all of the audit on a separate file using simple but out-of-the-way formulas. Not only did I reduce the task from 3 weeks to basically real-time checks, i.e. no time, but when I was told that I had to perform that task as my main duty every month, my job became a doddle. I didn't let on that everything was automated by SUMIFs, indexing, max values, and range checks. I'm living the dream. Sorry if I rambled on. At work, I go through parts and apply 2 different kinds of tapes and 2 different kinds of weave. I finally got the rhythm down, and now I do each part individually and apply everything at once. Everything else goes through an entire order, just applying tape, then goes through it again to do the weave. I asked to use the big table in the back of the shop and just put all of the tape and weave tools there, and did all of the parts at once. Normal rate for an 8-hour shift is $1,200, but I can manage $1,800 in a day going at a nice, steady pace. I can't say what products we make, they're too recognizable and Googling it would reveal where I work and live. And thanks to being a hard and fast worker, in my superior's words, the uppers leave me alone at the table in the back. They look the other way when I have an earbud in one ear, and they don't notice that I scroll Reddit or read a lot. I knew a guy who had a very low-level data and reporting job. He had several daily and weekly work responsibilities, including a bunch of reports that needed a bit of tweaking from raw data to finished product. But like I said, low-level. We didn't find out until way later, but he'd set up macros for each of his major responsibilities where he could. Once set up, he'd just run the macros to do his work, but then he'd, smartly, hold off on delivering the reports until just a little before the deadlines. He'd hit every assignment and was seen as reliable. He'd also complain about the workload so people would leave him with that work. I doubt he did a full hour of work a day after he set up what he did. Eventually he left the job for one with better pay. But damn did he work lazy. Also, he was smart not to reveal until the end, because if he'd told them about it, he would have gotten a pat on the back and would have been given a whole other workload on top of maintaining those macros. The guy milked the job, not the other way around. Yeah, we're getting far enough down the list of answers that it's almost all data entry jobs that concealed just how much they'd automated their role now. I find it pretty satisfying in any case, and just insanely jealous that I never got one of these roles. Now let's share one with a cautionary tale of why you don't show your hand when you find this solution. I knew a guy who did this, but he revealed it. The company shared the macros with all the employees. It made everyone else's life easier, but they also got an increased workload. The company made a lot more money, and this guy got none of it. He didn't even get promoted. One of my favorite stories from my youth was The Tale of the Man Who Was Too Lazy to Fail. To quote, "I got fed up with handwriting itemized suborders at work, so I set up a spreadsheet that you can just fill out. Then I got tired of having more than one program open and not being able to search with and among those order sheets. At least not automatically or easier, so I'm having our FileMaker guy integrated into our greater ordering and invoice system. I was frustrated at the pointlessness of sorting a giant pile of paper invoices from an unpaid stack to a paid stack every month, so I just used the accounting software to keep track. I became so irritated with having to fill out a multi-page printed spreadsheet for every single order, sometimes just one item 2 pages in, and frequently there'd be those pesky itemized suborders, so I condensed the items into the most used and put them all on one easy-to-read sheet, and encouraged my coworker to simply write out the more uncommon items at the bottom. Basically, I hate paperwork, and paper invariably leads to busy work. I've tried to reduce the use of paper in our office, but I haven't been entirely successful. We have to have written order forms available, because sometimes the orders are coming in too fast to be able to type it all quickly and correctly, and have to keep some paper records for things like organic, FDA, and USDA audits. But all in all, I'd say my absolute hatred of filing has reduced busy work here by at least half."
Reddit, what did your crush do that absolutely killed your interest? This was in college. We were acquaintances and had a few classes together. He was cute, funny, and I totally had a crush on him. He asked me out to dinner and a movie. At the restaurant, he ordered the most expensive things on the menu: appetizers, drinks, lobster, and even dessert. When the bill came, he said, "You got this, right?" I was so embarrassed, I paid. Then I said I'd skip the movie because I wasn't feeling well, and he asked me to give him $20 for gas and for wasting his time. I didn't and just left. Ugh. After that, he couldn't seem to understand why I didn't want to go out with him again. I was giving her a place to sleep when she was feuding with her mother. After weeks of picking up after her, I dared to complain. She had a screaming fit, picked up her crap, and left. I was glad to be rid of her, until later it got around to me that she was telling people on Facebook that I kicked her out for refusing to give me head. There's a lot I can forgive, but that was the first time I had ever had anyone just straight up make stuff up about me. Screw you, A. Her. Why are you leaving a tip? Me. Because the service was really good? Her. But she's fat. Bragged about drinking and driving. He told me that he and his friends have a, quote, nothing under 100 club, where they drink and then drive on the interstate going 100+ miles per hour and have to send a full-length Snapchat video of the speedometer to each other. 2 of my friends have been killed by a drunk driver 3 months prior. Well, I know someone whose tires are getting slashed. We went to Disneyland, where I had an annual pass with my friends and family for an event called Dapper Day, where you dress up in dapper clothing so everything looks very old-timey. I had done it for years with my friends, and he wanted to come, and my mom and siblings were going for the first time too. I was really excited, as it was the first time he had ever met my family. Well, we went on one ride with my family and my friends, and then he said, "Do you want to go on a ride? Just me and you?" I thought we'd come back and spend the rest of the day with them, but as soon as we were out of earshot, he was complaining about my family and how weird it was that they were there, and he wanted to do Disney with just me. But he had known they were coming, so I was confused. Then we went on one more ride, and he started complaining about how hot it was, how tired he was, and before lunch, he wanted to go home. I was super upset, but didn't want him leaving on his own, so I just went with him. But on the way home, I wished I had just let him leave and I could have stayed with all the people I loved. It was the first time in years my sister and my mom had been to Disney, and I didn't know it then, but it was the last time I got to go with my brothers before they grew up, and now they hate me. He was just some dude I dated, not a boyfriend or anything that lasted very long. I'm still so mad at myself for letting him ruin my day. But yeah, it absolutely killed anything I felt for him, and we broke up a few days later. Revealed his list of conquests. Not even my brother knows how many women I've slept with. Then he offered to take my virginity in the back of his pickup truck. I passed. I'm black, she's black. Our crush was mutual. Then she found out I was once in a relationship with a white woman. She then jumped down a rabbit's hole of my, quote, betrayal of the black family and some other nonsense of my trauma of self-hatred. Never been turned off by anything faster than that. We were in the process of getting together. She had called over and we spent an afternoon watching movies and sitting close together. By about 8 in the evening, she was considering staying later and I was casually encouraging her. She asked if she could take a shower and I was like, yeah, sure, of course. Glad that the bathroom was clean and tidy and I had fresh towels. Anyway, about 4 minutes later, she calls me saying she needs help with the shower, and I give her a moment to get a towel around herself and knock on the bathroom door. She opens it completely naked and shows me that she's having trouble with the shower controls. So I'm kinda unsure whether to make the move or start with the controls. So I go with the flow and show her this is hot and cold, this is pressure, this is rainforest, and this is power jets. In the 5 seconds it takes me to do this, she has sat on the toilet, which is kinda a weird thing because I need to be able to make the next move. And she's sitting on the toilet, naked, with the lid up, looking all disinterested. I'm thinking, I've screwed it up. When suddenly, kersplosh. And she takes a dump right in front of me. And then another one. I was just like, I'll leave you to it. She asked if things didn't work out if I would mind if she went out with my roommate. I said I couldn't possibly do that to him and left. He tried to discreetly take photos of my feet. Nothing against people who are into that, but the way he was going about it was super creepy. She asked me if I was good with kids because she was pregnant with her ex and that she's not good with kids. It was the first date. We were teenagers, he lived in a different province, and we used to chat on Skype. He wanted me to think he was cool or something and would always talk about his drug use. He ended up faking a heroin overdose when we were on chat together. I was hysterically crying and freaking out, thinking I was watching someone dying and was trying to figure out how to call 911 in another province when he, quote, snapped out of it and told me that he was actually okay. I didn't talk to him much after that. She said I, quote, smile too much. Screw you, I smile when I want to. I try to find joy. Kept arranging times to talk and whatnot, then always forgot or was not available. Oh god, as someone with ADHD, I really felt this one. I'm so worried this is going to happen to me one day. I tend to struggle with planning things if I want to participate in several social events, so I have to tell people in the current social event that I'll be going to another social event after I'm done with this one. Time for 3 back-to-back ones. Bullied the quiet kid in our class. Turned out to be the person eating everyone else's food from the break room fridge. Kissed me, and then, after he pulled away, told me he has a girlfriend. His sister actually approached me and let me know that he was once arrested for locking their other pregnant sister in their basement, went on a coke binge while she desperately tried to get out, and went outside to beat their unsuspecting neighbor's van with a golf club. That was a big ol' nope. This post is the equivalent of thinking, there's no way this is gonna get worse, and then it does. Yeah, I don't get washing. I just don't really like taking a shower or a bath or anything. Had a crush on this girl back in high school. She seemed like a sweet girl. After she rejected me, I let it go, but was still interested in maintaining some sort of friendship. Found out she was actually pretty toxic behind my back. She made fun of me for a lot of things that really didn't matter, like hand motions while talking, and I just lost interest in her entirely, even in a friendship. This was years ago on a first date. Tried to convince me to quit my job and put all my savings into gold bars, then demanded I let him read my tarot cards to see if we'd be a good fit. Nope, nope, nope. Huge crush on a fellow uni student. I was invited over for what I expected to be a platonic study date, but hey, any time spent is better than just being alone, or so I thought. Got there and found another student from class also. Okay, study group? Turns out her mom and her set us up for a full-press MLM pitch. Video, literature, the works. I stayed a bit not to be rude, excused myself shortly, and only talked to her in class just in passing from then on. Huge letdown. Edit, MLM means multi-level marketing, aka a pyramid scheme. Signing up to both buy and sell something, while recruiting others to sell also. You get a % of all your other recruit sales also. All the percentages basically flow upward, so the only way to make any significant money is to be high in the tree, towards the top of the pyramid. It's all bullcrap basically. Told me he was only being nice to me because he was interested in a friend of mine. I see his Facebook post now. He is dumber than a box of rocks on a treadmill. Talked non-stop about himself and his accomplishments and never asked me one question about myself. She slept with my dad. She got blackout drunk at a party and violently crapped her pants. The smell alone completely turned me off of any interest I had. When I was a teenager, we worked together as lifeguards. I adored him so much until one day he just starts talking about this random woman that he didn't know and wasn't even there, that was wearing shorts. He said he was fine until she sat down and had some cellulite on her thighs. And he kept being angry and talking about how she should be doing squats to be more appealing. Like, his rant was angry and long and no one was adding to his conversation. Just silence. After that, I took off my rose-colored glasses and saw that he was, in fact, a huge douchebag. I'm kinda grateful he showed himself that way, because I was really into him until then. Could have been a bad time for my teenage brain. We worked together, and as I got to know him more, I learned he talked badly about everyone. Nurses that are amazing, he'd belittle. Talk about how certain people don't know what they're doing because they've asked for an ultrasound IV as they were struggling getting a vein on a heroin addict. The paramedics were worthless, doctors don't know what they're doing, who he thought was hooking up, and it completely turned me off. He's in his early 40s and into gossip more than my teenage daughter. He picked me up for our first date and his car was disgusting. Not talking a few trash items, the entire back seat and floorboard was completely covered in piled up trash, even up front. I had to step on empty McDonald's bags, old soda bottles, wrappers, etc. to even get in. And all he said was, just move it around with your foot. No sorry or anything. Made me feel like trash too. Like, dang, couldn't even clean up a little? Dumped me after 9 months because she wasn't ready for a serious relationship. Got into a relationship the next day and was married within 5 months. Told me that she didn't like me back anymore, but maybe if I waited long enough, she would like me like that again. Edit, she told me that I had gotten more critical lately and I, quote, changed. So she wanted me to change back before she would be with me. Too critical about every word I uttered under the name of sarcasm. Light the back fence of the school on fire to, quote, impress a mate. Edit, should add that he did it whilst high. Basically shut me down and made it clear to me that I was being the typical nice guy cliche. This is back when I was about 20. After a couple days of sulking, I started examining my behavior and realized she was absolutely right. Glad it happened. My ideas of how relationships should work were entirely twisted at the time. I got my stuff together shortly after, addressed my stupid and entitled behavior, worked on myself, mentally and physically, and eventually met an amazing woman who is now my wife. Scary to look back and think of how close I got to becoming one of those incel neckbeard types. I'll kiss you, but I'd never date you. Told me he liked dating broken girls so he could fix them. See you later, hard-on. Talked smack about every woman in his life. Should have seen the red flags earlier. Didn't realize until later that he probably did the same to me. Apparently, having an opinion about anything and speaking for yourself isn't a very ladylike thing to do. I was a midnight clerk at a truck stop, and a very, very good-looking man came in every night on his run to visit with me. He wore an ankle monitor for probation/parole. I asked about it, and he told me he was falsely accused of kissing his ex-wife's daughter. She was 13. I took his word. He seemed to be a real good guy. About 2 weeks later, we were bullcrapping and flirting, and a little girl about 12 years old came in with her dad. He looked that little girl up and down like a pervert. I was instantly sick to my stomach. She invited me over to her place, not as a date thing, but just to hang out as friends. Her house was absolutely filthy, and the glass of Coke she gave me had a hair in it. She was really cute and had a great personality and was genuinely a nice person, but as soon as I saw cat crap on the floor near the front door and just dirty everything, my crush disappeared and I left in a hurry. Well, it turns out he wasn't interested in girls, so I knew I had to kill my feelings or feel stupid for keeping them. Said she was starting up a group for LGBT youth. I asked her why, and then realized I had been barking up the wrong tree. Attempted to get through a horror movie together, and he kept letting the movie run, then rewinding the movie so that the horror never came. He pretended to be scared and would whine about the, quote, scare that was coming. I guess he thought this was a cute gesture and would refuse to continue. It dragged a 5-minute scene into a 45-minute production of his, "Oh no, but I'm scared. No, I don't want to. This is terrifying." This was a guy who told me that he loved horror movies. He was full of really weird contradictions, but this was the straw that broke the camel's back. Edit, holy cow, this really blew up. Thanks for confirming I'm not insane for being annoyed with his actions. Thanks for the comments. A lot of them were hilarious. There were a lot of questions, so I'll try to answer some of them. What was the movie? It was an older J-horror movie called Kuchisake Onna. I think the English title was something like The Carved Mouth Woman. You mentioned he fast-forwarded. Do you mean rewound? Nope, I do mean fast-forwarded. He would rewind, then fast-forward to get to the beginning of the scene, and then pause it and whine about how it was going to be scary. He would also study the pause scene and look at clues to determine what the scare was going to be. Did you comfort/hug him? It was maybe the second time we'd hung out together, so even though I was interested in him, it was too early to say we were dating, and I was pretty shy and kind of reserved, so no hugging would have happened even if it had all gone well. What were you doing during the 45 minutes? I remember thinking, is he for real? Then thought that somehow maybe he was trying to tease me. He's a man of a lot of contradictions. So I played along for a while. By the time 15 minutes passed, I'm sure I was sighing audibly. I suggested that we stop and maybe watch something else. He refused. Close to the 30-minute mark, I think I snapped and said words to the effect of, "Come on, it's probably not that bad. Let's just finish. Go through with it and continue the movie. Don't waste time." He laughed and kept up the one-man show of, "I'm a sensitive man and I'm not afraid to show it." I gave up and just started looking through my phone because this was such a waste of time. And finally, I think he realized he'd gone too far and let the scene play out. Did you end up finishing the scene? Nope, because he tried the same thing at the next scary part and I made my excuses and got out of there. Was he a child? Nope, fully grown male of legal age. Why didn't you just stab him? I considered it, but I wasn't carrying my Dexter kill room equipment and the blood would have been too messy. Just kidding. He was tall and I'm pretty short. Probably wouldn't have ended well for me. Did you let him know why you didn't want to see him again? Nope. I never told him that this was the defining moment in which I lost interest. He was also kind of controlling and had a number of really weird quirks that I won't bore my fellow Redditors with. Basically, we just didn't talk as much after that, and that was that. Dude was the perfect epitome of the term douchebag. He used to be nice to people only to gain their trust and then betray them. He was attractive though, and a smooth talker as well. We started talking, became friends, and I developed a crush on him. Unfortunately, I never knew then what type of double-headed snake he was. Then, on one day, I witnessed him throwing his best friend under the bus just to save his reputation. Completely lost interest, cut ties with him, and he gave no craps about it. Only then did I realize how toxic people can be sometimes. Started gaming with him and learned that he threw tantrums worthy of a toddler when losing matches. She physically shushed me in a group with her finger on my lips while I was singing along with my friends to a cover band. She ate a live snail. I was in 6th grade. She detested cats and insisted that I give up my furry buddy before she'd move in with me. It wasn't that she was allergic to cats. She issued the ultimatum because, according to her, my cat, quote, received too much of my time and affection and she wasn't going to compete. We played Monopoly. That game brings out the absolute worst in people. Overheard her insulting my hobbies, clothes, hairstyle, personality, etc. with their friends. Now, I was never Prince Charming, but man, that hurt. He didn't believe in dinosaurs. One of those super religious types, and someone got into a conversation with him about dinosaurs, and he was absolutely convinced that, quote, dinosaur bones were put there by the devil to trick us. As a firm lover of dinosaurs, as soon as I heard that, any and all attraction disappeared. Bouncer at a bar I used to go to. I had a mad crush on him, and he was beautiful. He was a bit of a tart. Every night, some starry-eyed, equally beautiful woman would leave with him. Being a bit of a tart was not a deal-breaker for me. I was too back then, if not as successful as him, as I'm not a super pretty girl. But one night, I guess he left crap too late. The hot girls were gone, and he informed me that he was willing to take me home that night. No. Nothing less sexy than "that'll do, pig." being treated like a sure thing, and of course the answer is going to be yes, because how would someone like me turn down someone like him? Being rude to the waiter and complaining that food is taking too long during dinner rush hour. I worked in the industry for a year. It's not easy when being slammed during rush. Started dating my best friend after flirting heavily with me for a week. She offered to drive and pick me up in her car because we had plans to go out to dinner and get to know each other better. I realized after about 20 minutes she was not driving to the restaurant and instead stopped at a gas station to get into someone else's car and buy drugs. Basically made me an accessory to a drug deal under false pretenses. My 18-year-old self thought it would be cute to invite him to a Christmas parade, but this dude had the audacity to ask me why I thought he would ever be interested in someone like me. Girl in car behind him honked when the light turned green. He got out of the car and began screaming and banging on our windshield. That's when I knew he was a psycho and I needed to get out of that relationship. Took me a destroyed home and 2 restraining orders later, but we've been broken up for 3 years now. She brought a friend to dinner with us, which was okay, I didn't mind. Then they both shoplifted afterward while I was on the other side of the store. Told her I didn't date thieves and she broke down apologizing. Chewed with her mouth open on our first date. I never thought something like that could kill my interest so rapidly.
What's your horror story with bad parenting from strangers? I'll start. I'm in line at the DMV today and I see a mom who looks, honestly, maybe 35 years old, tops. She has what can only be a 14-year-old daughter with a skin-tight t-shirt with what little cleavage she has on display, along with shorts cut so short that her butt is hanging out. This girl's on her cell phone just yelling up a storm at whoever she's talking to. It's straight out of Maury Povich, because the best part is her mom is dressed exactly the same. Her 3-year-old son is running around screaming at the top of his lungs, bumping into people, and at one point I turn my back and he runs up and hits me on the back of the leg. I had the audacity to ask the mother to watch her kid and I get a huge mind your own business rant. She then proceeds to place him in a stroller, give him a Pepsi and some flaming hot Cheetos. Where on earth have all the parents gone? Why is it more important to be friends with your kid? What would you have done? As a side note, when she yelled at me to mind my own business, I said, fair enough. Her reply, yeah, that's right. I honestly just laughed out loud. What else can you do in that situation? If she's not going to parent the kids, it's not like you can. I used to work at a sandwich shop and there was a man in line with his son. The little boy was a bit bouncy and kept tugging on the man's arm saying, "Daddy, I need to potty real bad." And the dad would say, "In a minute, son." This went on for like 5 minutes and the little boy says, "Daddy, I have to potty now." And the man all of a sudden turns to the son and backhands him across the face and yells at him, "I told you to wait a minute." And the boy bursts into tears. My manager was right there and she was in a fury. She started yelling at the guy that he was a jerk and a horrible person and told him to get the heck out of her store and never come back. The guy was like, "Mind your own business. This is my kid and I can do what I want." And she said, "Leave now before I call the police." So the man hitched the boy up by his arm and practically dragged him out of the store. The worst part, they were less than 10 feet from the bathroom the entire time. That poor kid. I hope that kid ended up peeing all over the inside of Dad's car, because you know what? He deserves it. I used to babysit for a very dysfunctional family. The mom got knocked up on purpose so the dad wouldn't leave her. Subsequently, the dad hated the mom and resented the child. I know this because they fought about it often, publicly, and in front of the child. When I would arrive, the baby would always have a very dirty diaper that had obviously been like that for many, many hours. The baby's first word was her own name and then my name. Not mama or dada, her own 3 freaking syllable name. One day, the child had no milk or baby food left, and the mom goes to the store and comes back with just a pack of cigarettes. I asked her why she didn't get anything for the baby, and she said, "Well, I didn't have enough for both and I don't get paid till Friday." It was Wednesday and she was just gonna let the kid go hungry for 3 days. There was nothing edible in the house. I absolutely lost it. I don't think I've ever raged out on someone so bad in my entire life. I let her have it for a good 10 minutes, screaming at the top of my lungs the litany of reasons why she was a failure as a parent, and how I was going to call CPS if things didn't change. Anyways, she burst into tears and took the cigarettes back and came home with milk. So I guess it kinda worked. I ended up making pureed veggies at home and bringing them to the little girl for the rest of the week. They moved away shortly after that, and I always wondered what happened to the little girl. Let's just hope that your reality check to her had a long-term impact. I teach first graders, and I'm convinced most parents should not be raising children. Here's my most recent story. One day, I start afternoon class and I ask my students how they're doing. One girl says bad, and I ask her why. She says that she's hungry because she didn't eat lunch. I ask her why she hasn't had lunch yet, and she says it's because her mom was playing on the computer and she forgot to feed them, and then didn't have time. How the heck do you forget to feed a 7-year-old? Later, I brought her a snack when I had a minute because there's no way I could let a kid go without food. Unfortunately, it's always the kid that suffers in these situations. I recently had an encounter from the other end of the spectrum. I was cycling through the downtown area when I passed this Chinese lady who let her tiny kid, I'm guessing around 3 or 4 years old, walk on the street side of her. And just as I passed, this kid is making some excited gestures at his mom, happily gibbering about something while simultaneously pretty much running backwards right into the side of me, while I'm cycling at full speed. He goes flying backwards. I'm pretty sure I hit him right in the face with my knee. I stop, horrified, to check if the kid is okay. He's making this face like he's inhaling a huge breath of air to start bawling. But before I can get off the cycle or he can start screaming, his mom looks back, sees what's going on, and just snips a few words of Chinese at him. The kid just looks at her and instantly regains his composure, with obvious effort. I'm pretty sure he's hurt, but he quietly just runs right back up to her. The lady just smiles and waves at me and walks off at a brisk pace with her kid, and I'm just left standing there looking completely stumped at the bystanders who seem just as confused. That kid is going to grow up tough, even if it kills him. I'm pretty sure his mom's going to make sure of that. At the end of the day, kids will be kids and accidents happen. Things like this sometimes can't be avoided. Mom was probably of the mind that if she just doesn't acknowledge it as a bad thing, the kid won't either and they can just move on. If he was really hurt, he would've let you guys know. I used to work at a crappy gas station / convenience store. One day, a woman comes up to the counter with her daughter. She places on the counter hot dogs, hot dog buns, Kraft mac and cheese, and a 6-pack of Corona. She then asks me for a pack of cigarettes. After ringing up all the items, she swipes her debit card and it doesn't go through. She tries several times. After about the 4th time, she turns to this little girl who couldn't be older than 6. And I kid you not, she says, "Looks like you won't be eating tonight," and walks away, leaving her little girl at the counter tearing up. I was dumbfounded, and before I could say anything, the little girl yells to me, "You're a big meanie," and ran out of the door crying. Worst Thanksgiving ever. I mean, she could have tried putting some stuff back to see if it would go through at that point. Maybe the beer and cigarettes. You know, just priorities. While queuing in a coffee shop in England, 2 police officers walked in the door and went straight up to the agitated-looking woman in front of me. They started questioning her about her son, asking when she had last seen him, how old he was, what he was wearing, things like that. So it was fairly evident from the conversation that she had quite recently lost her 6-year-old kid. Both officers kept confusedly looking around the shop until the woman felt obliged to explain why she was in there, saying, "I'm gonna look for him. I'm getting me and my husband a coffee first. Go on ahead, we'll catch up." After picking up my order, I turned around to see them both sitting at a table drinking their coffees like not even a single care was given. As I walked out the door, I saw the woman peer out the front window, looking for her son, I suppose. Yeah, she doesn't seem to have as much urgency as you would think, does she? I was at the store with my dad, and we see this woman take her baby's bottle and pour Mountain Dew into it before giving it back to the kid. This is a baby, no more than a year old. My dad goes up to the lady and asks if she really just gave Mountain Dew to the kid, and she replies, "Yeah, he likes it, so I give it to him. I always give him what he wants." I fear for that generation. I was at the mall once and there was a young family in front of me. The little brat in the high chair didn't like the cheeseburger from McDonald's they got him. So he wailed and screamed and then picked up the cheeseburger and threw it at the dad, painting his shirt with ketchup and mustard. The dad then went up and got the kid another meal. I remember thinking, if I did that to my dad, I wouldn't have made it out of the mall alive. Look, sometimes you gotta discipline your kid. I get it, they're your kid, but you can't let them get away with stuff like this. You're not doing them any favors. I saw a kid, probably 5 or 6, walking with his dad to soccer practice. They walk to one pitch and there's no one there, and the kid says, "Oh, sorry, we're over there," pointing to another field, maybe 150 yards away. The dad slaps the kid on the back of the head and calls him stupid and other names. Some kids have no chance. Like, come on, that's such a small mistake and you're gonna go ahead and smack the kid for it? Who's being the child in that situation? I went to a barbecue thrown by a friend of a friend. There was a woman who showed up with their ex-husband and his new girlfriend. All 3 were drunk and a bit too friendly with each other, while alternating name-calling. With them was a 2 or 3-year-old little girl, cute as can be with a real light about her. I vaguely remember them telling very inappropriate stories. When the little girl says she's hungry, the father goes and gets the bag of McDonald's he'd been grazing out of and pulls out a near-full container of fries. He proceeds to grab a few and then throw them on the lawn. The girl, without missing a beat, runs around picking them up off the lawn and eats them. He repeats this over and over in front of all the other adults, who didn't seem to take issue. It was like a game to him that he was clearly enjoying. Mom even smiled at it. My wife and I promptly left the party. This guy's treating his daughter like an animal. Someone needs to call CPS. I was lining up at the register at some store, and there was a girl around 10ish and her mom in front of me. And the little girl asked her mom if she can get the Harry Potter books because they're on sale. And the mom replies, "Why do you need the stupid books for? We got a big television you can watch the movies on." God forbid some kids want to read nowadays. I worked at the YMCA in Houston, and we did programs that reached lower-income neighborhoods, the kind full of crime and poverty. One day we were letting the kids go, and we watched the rides leave as a security issue. One of the kids had made a drawing earlier that he was particularly proud of, and showed it to his dad, gleaming. The dad immediately snatched it out of the boy's hand, ripped up the drawing, and smacked the kid, in full view of us employees. He went on about how he shouldn't be doing homosexual stuff like drawing, and smacked him a couple more times. Needless to say, we called the authorities and he was arrested for child abuse, or something similar. How does this man think he's gonna get away with something like that in full view of everyone who's very much interested in this kid's well-being? I've been a nanny for a little over 5 years, so I've seen my fair share of crazy families. But there's one babysitting job that sticks out more than any other. The ex's mom referred me to her hairdresser, so when she called me, I was pretty excited to go to her house. I was watching a 4-year-old boy that everyone raved about being so adorable and fun. He sure was cute, but fun is not the word I would use to describe that night. She left telling me she would be home anywhere between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. Came home at 4 a.m. and got mad at me for falling asleep on the couch. The kid had the worst ADHD I've ever experienced before, and there was absolutely no food or drink in the fridge, other than margarita mix and a 2-week-old half-gallon of milk, which he said he drank earlier that day. All of the sippy cups that they owned smelled like rotten eggs. I felt so bad for this boy. I looked through every drawer to see if I could find anything to give him, and all I managed to find was workout supplements, steroids, needles, and lots of different pills like phentermine and ephedrine. I bought him some dinner, got them a fresh gallon of milk, and never came back to that house again. Another case of the parents are crappy people and the kid suffers. We went to a soft play center with my niece the other day. One boy managed to find this big red ball and jam it at the bottom of the slide. His little brother then proceeded to go down the slide and get stuck. Chaos ensued for a while as they tried to get the boy out. The parents were going on and on at the staff. Eventually, they swindled a free drink out of the place. Then they gave their daughter a lollipop, no food is allowed in the actual play area, and she ran around the play area and climbed the stairs to come down the slide. We were watching all of this whilst keeping an eye on my niece, basically getting her to stay out of the way. The parents made barely any effort to get the lolly off her. She then went into this little viewing thing made of perspex with the lolly in her mouth and was dribbling. Her drool then proceeded to drip down to where we were sitting. We promptly left after being being completely grossed out. This is by far the nastiest family I've ever come across, and a very good argument for contraception. Yeah, some parents are a walking billboard for reasons to not have kids. In high school, I made friends with this really shy guy who stuttered and was generally socially awkward, but really nice. He was also a genius pianist. He was taking 2 years for one at his piano courses. He was composing amazing pieces at the age of 16, and I truly admired his ability. His parents, however, didn't see it that way. They were both engineers, and they considered his love for music despicable, worthless, and a bad habit that needs to be uprooted. When he was practicing at home, they tossed old shoes at him, and they made him sleep on the floor if he played for more than 2 hours. Once a professor from the musical academy called them to tell them that they have an amazing son and that he could be famous one day. They hung up the phone. When high school was over, he really wanted to apply to the musical academy, but they didn't let him. They said that the only courses they would ever fund were the ones in math and geography, the qualifying subjects for the economy university. So he had to go there for his higher education. I haven't seen him in a good while, but I heard he went abroad. I hope he escaped those jerks for good. It really sucks to see kids who have an amazing amount of talent and parents that just don't support them the way they need to. My mom is a teacher at a primary school in England in a really bad part of town. The stories she brings home are appalling, from kids who have never been read to or even talked to much who come to school age 5 without being able to speak in proper sentences. Also, the saddest things often involve parenting from the previous generation. The standout event being a mother who came into my mother, the music teacher, and SBS, that she doesn't know any nursery rhymes to sing to her children, which was one of the set tasks for bonding type homework. She spent an hour with that woman teaching her Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. I was at a mall playground with the wife and 2 kids. My son was 3 years old and was running around with about 20 other kids, most of them his age. Keep in mind that kids can't be taller than 3 feet to play in this little playground. There was this one fat woman and she was watching about 4 kids, and all of them were taller than 4 feet and they were playing rough, pushing each other around and whatnot. My son goes around the area that they were playing at and starts playing by himself, and one of the kids tries to kick my son. My wife, who's 5'2" and 100 pounds, calmly walks that way with my 3-month-old daughter and tells the woman, who's like 5'6" and about 250 pounds, to watch her kids because they were playing a little rough. She said, "Okay, whatever." My wife stays there and watches just in case something happens. The older kid goes running towards my son and pushes him. My wife tells the kid, who's about 9, not to push my son. The woman flips the heck out and starts screaming, "Don't scream at my baby," and blah blah blah. My wife tells her that she should pay more attention to her kids and how they're too old to be playing around smaller kids. She tells my wife to shut up and not to tell her how to raise her kids. My wife starts walking away and the woman starts getting louder. So from my seat 15 feet away, I yell at her, "You do not talk to my wife that way. Your kids are misbehaving and you're doing nothing about it. Learn how to be a good parent." She shuts up and looked at me in disbelief. She didn't know I was with my wife, or that I would talk to her like that in front of so many people. She then started to talk crap again, and we ignored her. After 5 minutes of her ridiculousness, my wife got the security guard and she got her butt kicked out of the place. 15 minutes after, she passes doing threatening signs at my wife, but when I looked at her, she stopped and looked away. I was seriously raging and about to beat her, but I did my best to calm down and be a responsible adult. I totally get it, my friend. Interactions like that get your blood boiling, especially if someone's gonna go threatening me and mine. "If you don't wear these pink shoes I'm buying you, I'm gonna cut all your rabbits' heads off." Sadly, that was actually my dad talking to a 10-year-old me in a thrift store. He then proceeded to get into an argument with a woman who said, "You're the most horrible person I've ever heard in my life," and called her a man-hater and a lesbian before we finally left. Compared to some of the other stuff, that's relatively mild. Yeah, my childhood sucked. I was at a movie theater and we had just walked in and sat down in our seats since the theater we were going to was open. An employee, probably around 35 years old, walks in and asks everyone, a small handful of people, to leave for just a few minutes so we can clean it. He had a stutter and some type of mild disability. The employee was super friendly and nice about having to ask us all to leave. This dad with a beer belly and cut off sleeves who was there with his 3 preteen and teen kids started making fun of the employee employee in the way he spoke, joking, mimicking, and trying to get his kids to join in with him. I chewed that jerk out. How are you gonna set an example like that for your kids? This guy's being super friendly, working hard, and you're gonna give him a hard time because of the way he speaks, which he can't control, by the way. Some people really shouldn't breed. I worked as a waitress for about 4 years. One family was very rude and demanding every time they ate there. Their children, ranging from 5 to 10 years old, would snap at me or shake their cups to get my attention. When we didn't come right away, the children would literally start screaming, while the parents laughed. Another family had a 12-year-old daughter that would take all the sugar packets from the table and play with them. Much of the sugar ended up on the floor or on the table. Once I figured out what she was doing, I would go take away the basket before they sat down. Lastly, I only saw this family in there once, but it was a tatted up gangster couple. The mom was no older than 23, and they had 4 kids. Let them run around the restaurant untamed and basically ignored them the entire time. They made a mess of the tables and didn't even tip. Oh, and they also tried stealing quarters off this cancer research donation thing we had. I work customer service at Loblaws part-time while I go to school. Lucky me. I've grown resentful of people. One day, I encountered a lady who was absolutely flabbergasted that her milk, on which the expiry date was clearly written, had gone bad. She was going on and on complaining. Had the store manager called down, the front end manager, and the dairy manager too. Once this whole ordeal was handled, she turns to her 14-year-old daughter and says, "Now that's how it's done." As someone who worked in customer service and retail for a good portion of their life, I hate people like this. Don't be teaching your kids to be the same jerk you are. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I think it should be mandatory that every person has to work at least 2 years in customer service, just to learn to be a little humble.
People with religious extremist parents. What was it like growing up? Had an exorcism in the living room once, also didn't get all of my vaccines, and now I don't know what I'm at risk for since those tests to see what vaccines you've had are so expensive. Oh, making friends was awkward in grade school because I couldn't watch the shows and listen to the music they did. Some of my earliest memories are driving with my whole family in the Suburban and my dad telling us all the great Christian persecution was going to begin soon, and we all needed to be prepared for them to take us away from him and my mom and how terrible it would be. He got very into Y2K prepping as well, and I remember calling my friends and telling them to believe in Jesus because the world was going to end and we needed to all be ready. I also remembered being confused as to why I didn't have any good friends. Middle school was pretty rough for me. I moved 1,000 kilometers to get away from them. It was terrible. I remember getting into an argument when I was 15 with my parents about how crappy my life was. I had no time for friends because I'd wake up, go to school, come home, do dishes, then homework, then chop wood for 2 hours, clean the floors, maintain the fire in the wood stove, etc. It was like minus 30 degrees Celsius, and I have to basically take care of my parents, make them coffees and teas, make them food, keep the fire warm for them. It was the only means of heating that we had. Neither one worked. They just sat there for 16 hours a day on their computers, smoking 5 packs a day between them, staining the entire inside of the house yellowish brown. I used to get bullied in school for smelling like smoke. Anyways, they were bragging about their conservative parenting skills, being superior, etc. I just said something to my dad along the lines of, "Get off your high horse." One of the few times I ever talked back. He just shoved me as hard as he could and stormed out yelling and swearing. Used to get beat and yelled at all the time, so that was nothing, to be honest. It was awful. I burnt my hands and arms occasionally in the wood stove stoking the fire, and my mom used to say things like, "If you think that's painful, just imagine the torture that's ahead of you if you don't respect your parents." She literally said this to me too: "God will make it so that I'll forget that you ever existed when you go to hell and I go to heaven because God takes good care of mothers." I am not exaggerating. This actually happened. Pretty sure I've said this before, at least in so many words, and I'll say it again. Fanaticism in anything is only going to lead you down a dark and horrible path that will surely lead to people absolutely hating you. And if they don't, it's probably because they're just as indoctrinated as you. I'd hear my mom constantly complaining about how I am not religious and a shame to the family. Occasionally, there was even a comment about how me not being religious is the reason of my parents' health being bad. When I was young, my mom was cautious with who I was friends with. People practicing other religions were a strict no-no. I have a friend since college, and my mom constantly worries that I'm going to convert. I was always under my parents' watch. They were helicopter parents, so that I couldn't do anything against our religion. I was always the weird kid because my clothing had to be appropriate, and anyone that wasn't our religion, I had to try to convince them to come to our church, or what was the point of being friends with them. Women weren't equal, and we were told that everything we were doing was practicing to be a good wife and mother someday, and that it was our true calling and nothing else mattered. If we planned to go to college, that was great because it could help us teach our children. Sundays were for church only, or church-related activities. No TV, no playing outside, etc. We were just normal enough that we thought we were normal until we grew up and realized that we didn't have any self-esteem or value in ourselves without the church giving us our worth and value. I'm still trying to detox and to find ways to raise my kids because I know I don't want to raise them like I was, but I also don't know the right way to raise them any other way, and I fall into the pattern of being like my parents. Not my parents so much as my grandparents, but my parents carried on the traditions for most of my life. No shows or movies with talking animals, encourages friendships with demons. Women wear ankle-length skirts and dresses, don't cut their hair, keep their hair in a tight, modest bun for church, or any time they wear it up. Purity promises and rings at the start of puberty. Women do not work outside of the home unless absolutely necessary. When my brother got outed as gay, my grandmother nearly tried to exorcise the devil out of him. Church was cult-like, youth groups was a brainwashing session. I've been made to read the Bible multiple times over as my homework instead of real schooling. I'm an atheist now, undoubtedly because of how religion was forced down my throat past my tears growing up. I've had to learn not to hate every religion or religious person I come across. My years at church broke my sense of self-worth and my moral compass until very recently. For me, it was only my mom who was religious, Jehovah's Witness. She converted a few years after my parents had me, so my dad had no idea how bad it was going to be. No holidays or friends for me growing up. I remember freshman year of high school. I wanted to hang out with some kids after school. My mom was not having it and drove around town to find me. It was humiliating, and she openly disapproved them because of how they dressed. She didn't want me hanging out with the wrong crowd because it would stray me further from God. After that, I just stopped bothering trying to make friends last outside of school. My childhood memories were mainly hearing my parents arguing and threatening divorce because my dad was unhappy and hated that our family couldn't do most things like birthdays, Christmas, Halloween, etc. I'm pretty sure their love life was depressing too because lovemaking was only to procreate and it had to be missionary. She openly hates homosexuals and is very judgmental. She has exploded on me and given me silent treatments due to my choice of hair color and fashion. My dad also lost a lot of friends just like me. I'm 26 now and they're still together, but I know they're struggling like they did when I was 5. When I was a kid, my best friend in the entire world actually was a Jehovah's Witness, and I didn't really understand it by any means, but they weren't that bad or anything. Like, you know, they were pretty normal. They just went to church and stuff and didn't do Christmas and stuff like that. I remember their family being a little dysfunctional, but so was mine, and that didn't really matter to me because, like I said, we were just best friends. Grew up hardcore Mormon. I'd like to stress that my childhood isn't as common for other Mormon kids. Most of the time, Mormons are fairly understanding and loving to their kids, but the Mormon culture does promote the mentality my parents had. When I was growing up, I wasn't punished like some others here. I was spanked and experienced the belt, but that isn't why I have some psychological problems now. The real punishment was shame. From the earliest age I can remember, around 6, I was told that I was lazy and wasting my life away. When I first heard the word SX around 11, I looked it up on the family computer. I was a pervert from then on, and had to talk to the bishop every month for a checkup. Hell, in every school I went to, my parents told school counselors that I wasn't allowed on computers because I might look up pictures of naked women. I never did this. This is just the Spark Notes version, but I internalized the shame. Being so young, I just accepted that I was what my father called me and hated myself for it. I was a lazy failure at 6. I was a pervert at 11. It didn't stop me from doing any of the things I was doing before. I just learned to fear my father's footsteps as if it was the devil himself walking down the hallway. I lived my life in the brief intervals between punishment. I am still not beyond this at 24 years old. I later found out that the reason my father lashed out at me and called me these names was because he was fighting his own battles on these issues. He watched smut and hated himself for it. He lost his job. Not his fault. 2008 was hard for everyone. 2020 is no better. And felt inadequate. He was directing his own self-hatred at me. Now, both of us hate ourselves, and digging our way out seems impossible. From my mother's side, things were smooth. However, my father was using religion to abuse me. As a Muslim, we used to memorize the Quran. For me, I wasn't wasn't good at memorizing, so I spent 12 years, 3 hours a day trying. After all, I stopped trying and he kept shaming me for not completing it. During the 12 years, he was always comparing me with other kids, friends and cousins, which made me hate them as well. He would also use religion to abuse my mother, face covers and gloves and other crap. Not only that, he listens to music whenever he wants, but when he sees us listening to it, he starts yelling and shaming us. Extremists consider music as taboo. Life was hard for me when I'm close to him, so I moved away. I wouldn't call them extremists, but Pokemon, Harry Potter, MTG, and a lot of other stuff was banned. Pokemon because it promoted evolution over creationism, other stuff because of magic and demonic imagery, the list goes on. I missed out on a lot of cool stuff growing up. Then both my uncles came out as gay, and the whole religious bullcrap stopped soon after. Parents and I get along fine now, but I'm still kind of salty about some stuff. They confiscated my entire secret stash of MTG cards when they found them. I'm super atheist now, by the way. How insecure do you have to be with your ideology and just way of life if you feel like, I don't know, Pikachu could flush years of indoctrination down the toilet because your child plays Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh or some crap? It's just so stupid. Same for religions that ban music. It's just pathetic at a certain point. My parents are still Muslim and I am still not an adult, so I am still in the process of having to live with them. You would guess that my father would be a little more open to the world after seeing his half-brother being happily married to a man. No, exactly the opposite. You are not allowed to be like him. He is going to the bad place. He is tainting the family's reputation. That is point one, forcing their child to be someone that they simply aren't. They want to force me and my brother to go back to Turkey. I do not want that at all. I was born and raised and I have lived in Germany for my whole life. Turkey is also really anti-LGBTQ+, something that would really endanger me. Having parents that think that mental illness in general do not exist and are results of demons entering the body to torment your soul is not a great thing. I am pretty sure that I have anxiety, depression, and maybe something more that I am not comfortable with sharing, but guess what? There is no such thing as anxiety or depression. You simply do not wish to follow my guidance. And they send me to the mosque to learn and read our Quran and to chase the demons away. I need a therapist since I was maybe 6 years old, but nobody listens. I am feeling like they are trying to take my identity away. I am someone who isn't comfortable with their body at all. I don't mean weight, I mean the gender they assign me at birth. But I know that I will never get the chance to live as who I am. Even my friends do not accept my wishes and still use the wrong pronouns and name. Guess I'll never get the chance to choose who I want to be and who I want to love. Like seriously, they picked who they want to marry themselves, but when I asked if I can choose my husband, I get a no? I am someone who would gladly cut them out from my life, but sadly I know what would happen. They would try more things to get me to stay, or would never leave me alone. My family thought my dad was murdered in Ecuador on a mission trip and that it was my fault. He was on a mission trip and would call us daily from the phone in town about a mile walk from where he stayed. We didn't get a call for 2 days and then got a voicemail from a hospital in Ecuador that was in Spanish and had bad reception. Around this time, I snuck a copy of Diablo home from a friend's house to install on my computer against my mother's commands. She was very religious and warned me about the evils of bringing sinful things into our home. Always said that doing so would invite devils into our home and our lives. Long story short, I lived in complete agony and regret for a week thinking I murdered my father, just to get a call from him when he landed in Texas saying they lost power to phones in town and he wasn't able to call home. This is just one of the many times I was messed up over our religious upbringing. My parents were pretty cool when it came to religion and raising me and my sister growing up. They were both Christians and I was taught all the stories and such, but we weren't churchgoers. It was exposure to my aunt and uncle and their family that really gave me a taste of religious fundamentalism. I moved from a heavily Catholic, though my immediate family weren't Catholic, small Texas town to Middle Tennessee where I turned 10. Not only did I really get my first taste of religious fundamentalism moving into the Bible Belt, but particularly the hardcore Baptist sect of it, the largest being the aforementioned aunt and uncle. Our families got along, but they would always pressure us into going to church with them, make buttholish comments about our parents raising us for hell and that we turn out to be bums and women of the night. Over the course of 13 years of living in Tennessee, I moved back to Texas a decade ago. Our families had more than one falling out. I'm grateful that I didn't live directly under the thumb of it, but between them and the overabundance of fundamentalism in rural Tennessee really turned me off religion entirely, and is a large reason of why I am so proud to be an atheist today. So congratulations to said aunt and uncle, you failed spectacularly. I was raised Mormon and I happen to also be gay. My father is nothing short of devout, very, very religious. I ended up feeling alone most of my teenage years, and at the time thought I would disappoint my parents so strongly I thought I would never survive the stress. So there's a lot of pressure to feel the spirit even at a young age. But there's a lot more age-based ceremonies, so you get a lot of attention specifically on yourself at a young age. 8. Baptism. My parents also gave me Mumi, First Bible/Book of Mormon. 12. Become a deacon, passing sacrament. 14. Become a teacher, preparing sacrament. 16. Becoming a priest, blessing sacrament. 18. Gaining the priesthood, the right to most of the authority and capabilities in the church. 19. Going on a mission. Anyway, I never felt anything, and once I started having gay urges, I freaked and repressed those emotions deep down. By the time I was 16, my faith was faltering, as so many of the teachings made no sense to me. I stopped going to the church, never got the priesthood, never went on mission, and my parents kept saying, it's just a phase. At 25, after another failed female relationship, she was incredible, I just had zero attraction to her. I finally came to terms with being gay. I had no idea how I would ever find the courage to tell them. I was so afraid they would shut me out and I would lose them forever. Especially my dad. Despite his strong religious background, he was always a very loving father. I love his company. When I was 27, I told my parents I actually had a boyfriend for a year and it was going well. My mom basically started becoming hysterical. My father, stone silent. My mom spouting facts about HIV. My dad's look of confusion and controlled poise was unnerving. It was a bumpy next couple of years for both of them, but my mom came around sooner. My dad took forever. I reminded myself it took me 13 years since puberty to accept this. I can give them time too. He started coming around since I got in a new relationship with my partner. My current partner of 4 years is incredible. He melts the stone hearts of both my parents. He's kind, anticipates the needs of everyone around him, and a joy to be around. My parents see how happy he makes me. My mom asked me recently, when are we getting married? My father hugs my partner with genuine love and appreciation. Being raised religious was very stressful. I felt alone for a long period in my life. Now I am living what I thought was not achievable. I opened up to my parents. They accept me for who I am. I accept them, and we're all happier than I ever could have hoped for. Sometimes you really need a story like this one just to lighten the mood a little bit, because I'm actually really happy for this dude. Was deathly terrified of who I was. I'm bi. My dad literally told me he would disown us if he found out we were gay. The funny thing is, we ended up disowning him. He was doing illegal substances behind our backs, and now he can't see his grandkids. Grew up with heavily religious parents, but my mom was way more immersed within it than the rest of my family. Christian. She wasn't as strict with me compared to my other siblings, but she basically forced the idea of church on all of us, and kinda drilled it into our head that participating in worldly events will send you to hell. Sex before marriage? Hell. LGBTQ+ friends? Hell. Self-deletion? Hell. You get the gist of it. I felt guilty for feeling and thinking a lot of things I considered to be bad and would try to make up for it by praying. She was also the primary source for my horrid self-image issues. I was pretty overweight as a kid, and my mom has always been overweight, so hearing things like, you don't need to be eating that extra cookie, or you're way too big, or I definitely need to get you a trainer so you can be skinny like your friends, definitely crushed me on the inside. I did end up losing a lot of weight and evened out, so she never really comments on my body anymore. The whole deliverance plus tongues thing was scary to me as a child, and I never fully understood it. I tried so hard to feel the presence of God within me, but I never understood what everyone else was talking about. I never talked to God, and eventually I started questioning things when I was around 12 to 13. Anyways, fast forward to when I was around 15, I had realized how crappy organized religion was, and how inauthentic inauthentic and hypocritical everyone is. I told my mom that I don't believe in God, and she pulled but God provided everything for you, the house we live in, the cars we drive, etc., etc. Like, no, I'm pretty sure you working your butt off day in and day out did that. A lot of times she also likes to go on the whole, if you don't follow in God's path, you'll just be a vehement sinner who will go to hell spiel. It's tiring and repetitive. She's still a Jesus freak, and I still don't agree with the church whatsoever, but most of the time I just go so she won't moan at me or threaten to take my car keys away, or some absurd thing like that. Nowadays, though, I have no interest in being part of the church or religion whatsoever, but every Sunday morning we go, I always have a toke session beforehand, LOL. I remember crying myself to sleep some nights because my friends celebrated Christmas, so I thought that meant they couldn't get into heaven. That is like really, really sad. Like the thought of every year that comes around, everyone's like excited for Christmas, and then this one kid is just like so upset that his friends aren't going to go to heaven with him. That's really sad. I lack sentiment in any form, and I'm almost entirely incapable of love. If somebody hurts me, I automatically sever our relationship in my head, and it's like I never knew them. I grew up incredibly vulnerable to conspiracy theories because facts didn't matter. I grew up with no sense of empathy because the church told me what and how to feel about all things. I grew up with no self-confidence because I was expected to be perfect and could not be. I grew up with extreme self-loathing because if I wasn't happy, it's because I wasn't close enough to God. Depression was my own fault because I wasn't close enough to God. Illness was my own fault because I wasn't close enough to God. If I have financial pain, it's because I'm not close enough to God. Now that I'm almost 30, I've left that cesspool of lies and I'm learning how to be a human who feels empathy, sees facts, and is capable of love. It's frickin' hard. I'm gonna try and find one that isn't so sad. 1. Very religious parents. We have to abstain from eating onions, meat, and garlic for 9 days twice a year. 2. My parents always think that their religion is the best. They sometimes criticize other religions. 3. They think homosexuality is a sin. 4. My mother wants me to stop eating non-vegetarian food after I get married. 5. I'm only allowed to eat non-vegetarian on Sunday, Friday, and Saturday. 6. My mother frowns when I tell her that I don't believe in God. Yes, I'm Hindu. Yes, it doesn't sound so extreme, but I want to be a chef, so it does sound extreme from my point of view. No, I'm not going to get the hell out of this place because I still love my parents. My mother and father work very hard to ensure I get a proper education and food. Okay, maybe a little oppressive in some regards, but not that bad. I honestly think that's the best tone we're gonna end on.
People who have signed non-disclosure agreements that have now expired or for whatever reason are no longer valid. What couldn't you tell us, but now can? House Hunters guest checking in. I never made the show because I didn't close on the house. 1. I had to have a house under contract before going on the show. 2. They was select the other houses we were, quote, interested in. 3. I was assigned another significant other who was more, quote, interesting than my actual SO. That someone was making a wristwatch with 2 faces so you could set one to local time and one to the time you're from, for international travelers. My boss almost immediately broke it and had to pay. I was a model for a few big name/well-known makeup companies. I did several print ads for magazines and a few television commercials. The makeup artists do use the product advertised, but minimally. Like that mascara they're touting? It's over really good fake eyelashes, and they also used another brand of mascara along with the one they're trying to sell you. Also, the clothes in the ads you see are pinned to high heaven on the model. They fit nothing like they look. It's not you. It's not your body. It's fake advertising. Most of us models look just like you, wearing all that crap without the pins and tucks and double-sided tape. Did some work on the trading floor at Goldman Sachs. I had access to all trading accounts and transactions. Came across some shady-looking accounts which did not meet policy. It did not use clearly identifiable name, and I could not find records of creation or testing for it, etc. I asked my supervisor if I should look into this. He turned to me and said, "We don't ask about those accounts. Just ignore them. Orders from the top." Trading account creation is a long and detailed process that requires formal approval from multiple lines of management. These accounts circumvented all that and were basically anonymous with no trace. They were also trading high volume, and I was told to accept and ignore them. A friend of mine got a job at a prominent local distillery that makes an extremely popular flavored whiskey. They literally buy whiskey from a third-party distillery and dump Tarani flavoring syrup into it. One of my friend's brothers was on the MTV show Room Raiders. Everything in the show is staged. All of the items that they would find were planted. At the end of the show, the prize was not a date with the girl that he, quote, picked, he just got her phone number. Saw the new Ferrari hybrid tech by employee error and couldn't speak or mention it until today, as they launched a new hybrid model. I can now tell you that Ferrari intends to have a car with 3 hybrid motors, and that's pretty much it. Amazon made me sign one when I worked with a company that painted their airplanes before the public knew they had them. I did the FAA paperwork. I was literally only one of like 7 people to see their airplane fully purple with their logo on it. I was actually taken off the project for a day because they thought I lied about not having a Facebook. They meant business. I signed an NDA once when I was an extra on, quote, Mortal Engines. If you watch the movie, you'll learn more than what I did on set. Posted this before if it sounds familiar. Not me, but a guy I know was on Cash Cab. A lot of it was faked. He was told he will be on a travel food show and would get picked up by a fake taxi at a certain location at a certain time. There were camera crews all over outside the taxi, and there's no way on earth you might mistake it for a real cab. Previous pharmacy chain I worked for, always at risk of robbery for opiates, and we were always taught to give the robber what they want with no questions asked. Have heard of times that pharmacists instead gave bottles of Oxy with Tylenol in it instead, and other things that were reckless and dangerous due to possible retaliation when and if they figure out they have been duped. New policy in NDA comes out where specific opiates were placed in a safe with GPS tracker and charger, so when it is removed from radius of origin, it issues remote notification to third party that tracks location and works with local LEO to find the wanted party. I worked for a native casino. The golf courses lost a ton of money for us, as did the advertising for the courses. Food we generally broke even on because of all the comps. If a crime was committed by a dealer, they would watch the dealer for 3 months to see if there were accomplices. They used facial recognition and would pair match you, so if the same person sat with the same dealer over and over, they would know. This way, they could look for accomplices. Then, when they busted you, they would sit you down and make you watch a video of you breaking the law. They did this because they wanted you to plead guilty as opposed to an expensive trial. I had to sign an NDA because I was part of a test screening for The Dark Tower with Idris Elba. Tried to tell them it sucked. They didn't want to listen. We used an extract to flavor our peanut butter porter. Oh, God, it feels good to get that off my chest. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you like Am I the Genius, you'll probably love Am I the Jerk, link down below. I signed an NDA to waitress at a local family-owned restaurant. The owner was nuts, definitely had a severe personality disorder, and was worried about his recipes getting leaked. The restaurant is dead now, and his secret recipes consisted almost solely of frozen packaged food. Edit. Guys, stop trying to guess what restaurant it is. You never will. There are millions of family-owned places with crazy bosses that go under. You don't know the place, and I'm not going to tell you. Also, Mr. Krabs pays his employees enough to own houses and pets. I wish I worked for him. Signed an NDA when I worked as a fit model for Katy Perry's shoe line. Basically, a fit model is used for their good proportions to test out the fit of garments. I'm a solid size 7.5, so hooray for being average. I was hired on 2 occasions and got to hang out and give her my opinion on the fit, feeling, and comfort of different shoes. Didn't think she'd actually be there, but both times she was present and totally running the show. Super nice woman in person and remembered me when we met again. Also, she apologized for making me wait so long, which I thought was nice. It was a late night meeting as she just wrapped shooting a music video. Her dog is really cute too, and I got to save it when it got stuck behind a wall panel. Recycling company would throw away a lot of stuff. They collected the money from government subsidies while leaving the employees to a crap salary in a hazardous workplace. R/OSHA would have freaked out. That included having dirty syringes, thank God I didn't get stabbed by one, where people would sort the materials. It was awful. Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition had an amazing online character builder that made character creation a breeze. It listed all of the possible skills per race and class that was intuitive and made theory crafting for characters easy. Personal conjecture? They canned it because it took away from the pen and paper aspect of the game, and they were afraid with an online tool it'd take away from book sales. Worked for a short time as a quality assurance tester at EA and wasn't allowed to talk about the game I was testing. the console port for The Sims 4. There wasn't really much to talk about, but since the first few versions were basically just running the PC version on a console, there were a lot of bugs with it. One of the worst was a lighting bug we started referring to as disco mode, since it caused a bunch of multicolored squares to show up on everything at night or in dark areas. In 1990, I signed an NDA at Chili's when they showed me how to make their new Awesome Blossom. No other restaurant in town had anything like it, and it was hugely popular at the time. Worked at a matchmaking company. It's all bullcrap. It's just throwing darts at a wall until something sticks. There's no science or magic to it at all. Edit, I didn't work for an internet matching company, so they may have a different process. What we did was get a paid client and set them up on dates. The dates we found were from a pool of women, and we would just keep picking one after another. I quit because I felt like the women were just being used, and I became uncomfortable profiting off people's hopes. They very much play up on finding you true love and it's a process, blah blah. They'll very much play up on the fairy tale romance. It did change me. I don't really date anymore because I don't trust the true intentions of people anymore. I became very jaded to dating after all of that. Kraft Macaroni and Cheese are coming out with the more, quote, modern and upscale version to expand their market from lower income folks to higher income folks. It is almost entirely the same product as the 69-cent blue box, but will have a lighter, less orangey color that will be sold as shells and not macaroni. The box will be shaped differently, and it will go for $2.50 or more. Stated to be released by 1995. A certain global conferencing company still saves passwords for their web products in plain text. Any, and I mean any, employee that works there can see the password. My password there was not my pass, you idiot, because I know other people would see it eventually, and they'd even comment/laugh about it. Also, we once discovered that our main conferencing software was letting you sign in regardless of the password you entered, meaning you could sign in with any email address. Once we brought it up, we were first immediately stonewalled and told not to say anything about it in written format. TLDR, they had the dev team and legal on a conference call, and they decided it was best to just keep it quiet until they fixed it later that day. No client was to be notified of the issue. And the ones that knew of it were basically given a runaround until they gave up. They also added call spoofing to the software. They called it something fancier, but it was call spoofing. You can make a call and make it appear from any number you wanted. My team raised this concern many times, but were countered with, quote, no one will actually use it for that. Okay. That place was a goldmine of security risks. There is going to be a Capri Sun sports flavor in roughly 2003. I was a taste tester for Kraft Foods when I was 10. We didn't sign an NDA, but it was supposed to be a secret. Sony got hacked over that North Korea movie because of a 5-year-old account they didn't delete or monitor from an ex-employee. Mini Cooper/BMW replaced our car because the high-pressure fuel pump failed 6 times within 6 months. However, the recorded reason for the replacement of the car was because of, quote, stained interior from dirty mechanic hands, so it wasn't replaced via the Lemon Law. A government in 1972 identified a terrorist by his wife's breasts from satellite images. That's no moon. That's a space station. I was a translator, contractor, for the US military. I also translated Marvel comic books. Marvel had tighter security. Google doesn't hire direct support employees. They open small projects in the US, then hire up to 250 contract employees of varying support positions for the project. Once they get the stats needed to run everything efficiently, they have mass layoffs and outsource their jobs to a country, Philippines/India, that's willing to accept much less than the US counterpart. At the same time, Google rakes in a huge tax cut because they're, quote, creating jobs in the local communities. Edit, yes, this includes YouTube and YouTube content review. I was actually an actor in that commercial that said I wasn't. When I was a kid, I visited the dentist for a cavity. While there, the dentist slipped while drilling my tooth and drilled a hole under my tongue. My mom saw me tense up, and my dentist said, "Oh, nicked her there a bit, so you might see a little blood." I got home, and after an hour, my entire neck was swollen up like a frog, and my voice was squeaky because of the air pressure. A pocket of air was pressing against my heart. Dirty air at that, because of the bacteria in my mouth. I was admitted to the hospital as a code 4, with the code 5 being dead. When my mom tried to sue the dentist for damages, he claimed I was kicking and screaming and out of control during the appointment, even getting his secretary to vouch for him and testify. Total BS. I liked the dentist and I was a people pleaser. Also, laughing gas. My mom's lawyer was super pessimistic and told her just to settle and sign an NDA because she had a small chance of winning. So, my mom settled, being naive and scared to take on an office full of liars. She could never disclose who the dentist was, and we've heard other horror stories throughout the years about this dentist effing up other people's mouths. It sucks because every lawyer we've talked to after the fact says we had a very strong case, and it's likely we would have won. Like, really won. I'm pretty sure the company is bankrupt now, since it's been almost 15 years and the product hasn't seen the light of day. I was interviewing with a company that was working on a new design for a public toilet that was going to change everything. It consisted of the following. 1. A pair of toilets back to back. One would rotate up into the wall where it would be thoroughly cleaned and then rotated back down so the other, recently used toilet could be swung up into the wall for its turn and the washer. 2. The toilets wouldn't have the traditional water pool, but would instead have a conveyor belt that would carry the poo and whatever else back to an open pipe, clog-free. I quickly saw that this product was going nowhere, so I declined to work for them, but sent them a 2 or 3 page email about the pitfalls of the design. 1. What happens when the auto-swapping toilet machine accidentally activates while someone is on the loo? 2. How much more expensive will this be than a regular porcelain john? 3. How hard will it be to retrofit all of the machinery and plumbing for the auto wash into existing architecture? 4. How do you intend on cleaning a conveyor belt that has been exposed to human waste plus whatever other trash that gets put down onto the unit? 5. What will an open vent to the sewer smell like if you don't have the water separation like you do with a regular toilet? Welcome to the toilet of the future. Except we're going back to the past where we didn't have indoor plumbing, but also the outhouses are floating! A huge part of The Bachelorette was scripted. The company I worked for at the time was a major tourism service provider and featured prominently in one of the seasons. We were all pulled into meetings with the higher-up managers, given a spiel about what was in our best interest, and spilling any secrets was punishable by a $5 million lawsuit. Please sign here. I gave zero craps about the show at the time. Still don't. Just wanted to do my job. The quote, Bachelorette herself was clearly there to further her public profile or quote, acting career. The scenes were always set up before filming. Behind the camera, nothing was happening. The cast were told where to go, what to do, and how to do it. If half those guys weren't on their phones texting their real girlfriends most of the time, I would be surprised. So fake. So 100% fake. Edit. Well, this is getting a lot more attention than I thought it would. Here's a few tidbits. The NDA was only that we wouldn't spill secrets about the show before episodes involving our company aired. We were also not allowed to, quote, disparage the company, which honestly was easy to abide by since we were treated well and we had excellent managers. The Bachelorette has since gone on to a fairly successful TV career, hosting several shows. All of her official press credits The Bachelorette and her exposure during another elimination-style reality TV show with launching her career. I used to work for a company in the Middle East that provided relocation services to people in America. We represented 3 main companies under 9 different names, which changed every so often when the reviews got really bad. We had receptionists whose main task, aside from damage control, was to write a few extremely positive reviews for each company every single day in order to counter all the negative ones. Our job was to catalog everything our clients wanted to move and then provide the best possible price while lying through our teeth about the service itself. We promised professional movers who had all the necessary training and tools for the job, great prices, quick deliveries, you name it. On moving day, the movers who showed up were often in unmarked trucks or ones with completely different names and branding on them. The workers were often immigrants who were paid under the table and had no experience whatsoever. The deliveries themselves often took a long time, and items were often lost as multiple moves would be stacked into one truck without much labeling of items or categorizing in general. As mentioned earlier, we changed company names fairly often as the negative reviews and bad press stacked up. Moving is a toxic business, and people will always try to undermine and cheat. This is something you should never cheap out on, as the money is well worth the comfort of knowing your move is in good hands. If you are moving, I recommend finding a company that is local if possible so that you can meet the people who represent it and see that their business is legitimate. More importantly, they will be able to send someone to survey your belongings and give a more realistic quote and time estimate. Even if it costs much more than the quotes you receive online or from salesmen, it is well worth the peace of mind on an already stressful venture. My dad did some top-secret contract work for the Department of Defense back in the 1960s, and he signed a lifelong NDA as part of that job. He's dead now, so I guess it's safe to talk about it. The thing is, he never did break the NDA in any context. The strange part was that the NDA specifically prohibited him from using certain words ever again. The trouble is, some of the words are common vocabulary and it became obvious over the years which words he did not use. Words I know he could not say, because he would find other ways of saying them instead, included ball, balloon, briefcase, bomb, and nuclear. It would have made more sense for him to just say, "there's a balloon," instead of, "there's an inflatable latex object," but you gotta do what you gotta do. Eventually, he did gradually stop avoiding those words for the most part, although he would not discuss the NDA. I've worked with many internet service providers, at the past one of which I'm still under NDA for, but as for the other ones, the equipment replacement fee, divided by 3, that's how much we paid for the box versus how much we are going to charge you. If you're having an issue / something is broken and you want more money, just escalate the issue about twice for maximum return. Don't go past the supervisor's supervisor, however, because while there may be a level above them still within the call center, if you hit corporate, be prepared, because they are not required to be nice. As an example of the above, the story I tell is an angry lady who was out of service for about 6 hours. She was not happy with our get off our phone offer and escalated again. By doing so, she passed on about $65 worth of credits, 2/3 of her total bill, and a going forward discount on her total bill that would save her about $7 a month for another $80 over the next year. That was not good enough. She escalated past us, and the word came back via email. Her credit for time out of service was instead calculated down to the minute, meaning instead of $65, her new offer was now $1.12 and no discount off the monthly bill. If she attempts to escalate again, I was told to inform her we would take advantage of our service policy and cancel her account. Please return your modem within 30 days or face a $99.99 replacement charge. Had to sign an NDA for a secure shipment that came into a building I ran security at. Shipment came in at 2 a.m., unmarked transit van, 2 guys had to verify their biometrics and give me the correct password, then was required to deactivate the cameras on the floors along the travel routes they took inside the building and wipe the footage of them entering and leaving. Long play videotapes, so easy to say, oops, tape got chewed. They unpacked a set of vases and trundled off to put them in a private vault. Don't know what the heck was in them, but I've seen less security for pallets of precious metal bullion.
Teenage Redditors, what's the worst part of being a teenager these days? The pressure of being expected to go to a good college as you anxiously hear about student debt getting higher and higher. You kind of think it would be cool, but you're scared out of your mind of the prospect of being in debt for so many years after you graduate. At the same time as everyone's assuring you that if you don't go to college, you're a loser idiot who will work at McDonald's forever. Also, the idiotic technology stigma from older generations. I was reading a book on a Kindle for English in my French class, and she not only took it away from me, but yelled at me for texting during class. I tried to tell her that the thing was literally a slightly more advanced book, but she refused to believe me. On the same note, how online friends are considered not real because they're totally computer programs and not people on the other side of the monitor. My parents always tease me about not having many friends. When I do ask to go over to someone's house or vice versa, they say no. They want me to make friends without being with friends. Also, very high expectations suck. High expectations comes from every parent across every generation, I can promise you that. Having everyone ask what you want to do with your life. I don't even know what I want for breakfast. Everything is taken 20 times more serious. I got a 10-day suspension for a freaking box cutter in my car for work. I'm a straight A student with perfect behavior. My dad points out in front of the whole school board that in the 70s he had a shotgun in his car for hunting while he was at school. Yeah, times have changed. I would think a box cutter is being a little overly cautious though. Being treated like a child and then expecting us to act like adults and take on adult responsibilities the moment we turn 18. Again, generally applies to every generation. College educations cost more and mean less. Getting a degree is basically expected of us, and the great jobs that you're promised aren't always there when you're done. Storekeepers looking at you like you're about to steal something. Yeah, I remember those days. I'm expected to transition from my youth to an adult instantly. I need to have my career planned out, my college picked, and a job on the side while I still suck at doing many things like tying my shoe. I suck at it, I don't know why. It's so much pressure and I don't feel I have the maturity needed yet, but I need to fake it to make it. I'm gonna give you a pro tip here, buddy. Everyone's faking it. Nobody knows what they're doing. There are no real adults as you know them as kids. We're all just winging it. Everyone expects you to do something great. I feel so pressured sometimes. I once had a teacher tell me, "Oh, that's not a grade I expect to see from you. You need to do your best," even when I had honestly done my best. I just turned 20 and for a while I was really sad about it because I felt like I wasn't done being a teenager. This thread has confirmed for me that turning 20 really isn't that bad. It's just that most of my teenage life involved being too sick to really do much. A lot of time was also spent being ruled by depression and anxiety. The good parts of my teens were so good that it made me wonder how my teenage years could have gone if all the crappy stuff hadn't happened and I'd just been normal. But in the last week or so, I've definitely learned that being 20 is infinitely cooler than being 16, and that while my teenage circumstances weren't normal in the slightest, it is normal to have a crappy time being a teen. Parents. I have a tracker on my phone, and my parents flip and scream at me whenever I turn it off. Oh, and the sudden gravity of the world in my situation here. Yeah, I'm sure it's hard with parents having access to the technology that they do now. At the end of the day though, I will say 99% of parents are just trying to make sure that you're safe. School food is at an all-time low. To be fair, how would you know? We get put down by our elders for being wrong in some way because of the time frame in which we were born. So what if we don't have to walk 5 miles uphill every day to get to school? That doesn't mean I'm any less a contributing member of society than you are. To be fair, you're still in school, so not technically contributing to society yet, but I'm sure you'll do fine when you get there. How much stricter the laws become, and how easy it is to get into a lot of trouble. I hear all these stories from my dad and his friends, my uncles, friends' dads, and older cousins about all the things they did, and how sometimes they would get caught by the cops doing regular, stupid teenage stuff. Speeding, racing, drinking underage, paintballing in the streets, getting into fistfights, or getting caught with a little bit of pot. From what they told me, the cops seem a lot more relaxed, and let them off with warnings because they understood that teens do stupid things and try drugs and alcohol. I hear all of these situations and think if I ever did any of this and got caught, I would very likely get in a lot of trouble and possibly put in jail. It seems like no one remembers that the time to screw up and learn from stupid mistakes is when you're a teenager. As for high school, if I did half the things I hear they used to do in high school, I would be in jail. I will say, yes, cops handle things very differently nowadays, and I think a lot of that would come down to better training. They find a kid drinking underage and literally want to ruin their life. They seem to forget that they're here to help and protect society, not screw them over and make a quota. Way too much focus on grades rather than learning. This also causes way too much stress in school that is unhealthy and can create a terrible connection between the student and the joy of learning. Also, the college process. Screw the college process. I would argue now that learning is a lot more lenient and that there's a lot of different types of learning available to you now. Back in the day, if you didn't follow the specific curriculum that was assigned to you or you weren't able to keep up with it, too bad. Aspiring to be great or do something meaningful with your life, then realizing the system and society you were raised in will be the first thing to beat you and your ambitions down. Oh, this kid's already figured it out. Being expected to work for free to get experience, especially knowing not too long ago on-the-job training was paid and covered what college and internships do now. We've all seen the memes. Employers want 30 years of experience but no older than 20 and they're only going to pay you 3 cents above minimum wage. The fact that we don't believe in our own generation. The fact that the generation preceding us doesn't believe in us, even though they complained when the generation preceding them did the same. No matter how great we are, what great things we do, we're classified as a lazy generation that isn't as good as those before us. But if this question was asked 5, 15, or 50 years ago, the answer would be the same. It's a multi-generational, unavoidable, self-deprecating cycle of stereotypes that are in place to help legitimize the elder generations after they felt scorned when they were teens. And instead of fighting it as a group, we agree and blame each other. Okay, here's what I'll say on this one. If they're complaining that you have it easier than they did, that means that the previous generation did accomplish something, and you're gonna make life a little bit easier for the generation after. That's kinda how it goes. If you're gonna choose not to acknowledge that, okay, go live in a cave and rub some sticks together until you make fire. I'll leave you in the woods with a hand axe and we'll see how long it takes before you can send me a text. Parents tell me I'm not educated enough on social issues and I'm not making up my own mind. I get educated on social issues and make up my mind on those issues, but I don't share my parents' opinions on things. Suddenly, my perspective on these issues doesn't matter because I'm too young and I lack real-world experience. Give me a break. Sounds like your parents wanted you to make your own decisions and aren't happy that you didn't make the same ones they did. The worst part is honestly homework. I would rather go to school for longer and have less breaks if we don't get any homework, because it just ends up being longer work than if we just added 2 more hours of school, and tons of stress. Also, an issue with this is that teachers don't necessarily communicate how much homework they're giving to the kids, and thus can end up giving them a lot more than intended when all of them start piling up. For me, it's the stereotypes about us. Not all of us are pot-smoking, weed sock-wearing, sex-crazed, uneducated, and disrespectful jerks. We're considered a terrible generation, when really we're probably no more rebellious or terrible than our parents were at that age. I gotta agree with you on this one, but let me tell you again, everyone who was ever a teenager went through this. Other kids my age that think they're better than us because they listen to classic rock. This is always going to be a thing. People are going to tell you that their music's better than yours. Doesn't matter when it came from or who it is. Everyone has their opinions and they think they're cool because of it. For me, it's peer pressure. I'm sure it was the same years ago, but I recently moved from Massachusetts to California, and it was my first time ever being legitimately exposed to anything like weed or alcohol. I spend time with the people who are all about partying and hooking up and stuff, and I don't like that stuff, but I like the people. So my best friend comes up to me with questions like, "So have you hooked up with anyone yet?" And I'm like, "No." And he instantly goes around to every girl he knows I'm into or find somewhat attractive and asks them to hook up with me. And I know he means well, but it just makes me feel really weird because I was brought up being told never to touch drugs or alcohol and not to date until college and stuff like that. Just me, of course. It could be different for others. Also, you're constantly pressured to excel at something, and I don't. I'm just not amazing at anything. I'm average in every way. Let me tell you, buddy, 99.999999% of people are average. Don't feel like that's a mark against you. Being written off as a teenager regardless of your mental capacity or maturity. By that logic, one could write off humanity as a whole. Participation awards are dumbing everyone down. My peers are too entitled. Everyone's treated like a perfect star when they're younger because parents think their kids can't handle not being perfect, when it's really just the parents who want to see their kids be the best. Everyone grows up thinking they're special, and then either won't accept that they aren't when they're older, or has a hard time coming to terms with it. We're taught that we're all winners, but that takes away the joy of actually accomplishing or being good at anything. The peer pressure is overwhelming. The pressure to lose your virginity, smoke, drink, and do drugs. I'm almost 19, and I'm the last virgin among my friends. They're not really pressuring me to lose my virginity, but it just sucks to feel left out of the loop. It sounds like most of this pressure is coming from yourself. Don't worry, everyone takes life at their own pace. Being written off as a hormonal teenager really sucks. Parents don't believe that I'm depressed. They think I've been in a bad mood for these past few years. I'm pretty sure that harmful thoughts alone would merit a trip to a therapist's office. Not to mention the daily struggle of getting out of bed, going to school, hiding my wrists, pretending to be normal. I'm a teenager, so I'm just lazy or moody. One of my friends recently announced she's pregnant. She's 14. People say our generation is childish. I disagree. Our generation is growing up too fast. It's terrifying. I've yet to have my first kiss, drive a car, drink alcohol, have a child. All of these things that are now being achieved by kids 3 years younger than me. It's just not right. Knowing how badly the generations before us screwed the environment up is a really scary thought. The type of stuff other teenagers are into. No, Greg, I don't want to get drunk at 10 a.m. For me, it's just the transition. I just want to get settled, out of college, secure job, marriage. I'm 19 and currently enrolled in my 3rd different college. Granted, not everyone chooses to transition that much, but it is frustrating. Being told that everything that is discussed in school is absolutely necessary later in life. Screw that. I'd like trade schools, where we learn what we need to learn, and not everything the human race has discovered since the beginning of our existence. I'll say at the age of 32, I've never had to solve for the area under a curve. That if I want to be part of the popular group at my school, I need to be rich, smoke a lot, and drink a lot. Pro tip, there's no such thing as a popular group unless you make one out to be. They're just a group of people who enjoy each other's company, like you enjoy your friends' company. They have similar interests like you and your friends do. They aren't special. Why look up to them? Mood swings. What's that? You're in a great mood? Well, I'm gonna kick your heart in the balls for no apparent reason. Have fun overanalyzing every tiny aspect of yourself. Again, this is something that might never go away. Your entire life is online friends and relationships. You're a nerd or loser or whatever at age 14. People can track that back at age 24. It's ridiculous and kind of sad. People spend way too much time worrying about making their social media personas so big that they lose sight of the relationships in front of them. You never really know someone. This is one thing I will say is social media was nowhere near as big a thing when I was in high school as it is now. I can only imagine the added crap that goes along with that. I'm a virgin by choice. Most of my other friends have had quite a bit of sex. I get crap because I want to wait to lose my virginity with someone I've been dating for at least a couple of years, because I want it to mean something. My friends had a competition over spring break to see who could screw the most girls in a week, and they don't understand why I don't want to be like them. Education is incredibly expensive, and yet we're lazy or whatever for not attending college. A lot of kids in my graduating class don't give a crap anymore because they know they can't afford the higher education they want. All a lot of us care about at this point is graduating. We aren't given many options. Personally, learning to be a man without my father being there to guide me and teach me how. He passed away when I was 13. Aside from that, it's the overall standards that I'm being held up to. I'm the youngest child in my family, and my brother and sister both graduated high school with honors and are off pursuing great things. Then there's me. I'm just different from them. A freshman in high school who lives with a mom that just doesn't get that I see things and do things differently. Their knowledge is in books, and mine is in the sheets of music. I hate feeling like that makes me useless. I know I'm not the only one who feels this way. The standards are what's hurting a lot of teens. The fact that teenagers exist as some sort of pseudo-protected class and are hardly expected to be able to wipe their own butts, let alone make intelligent life decisions. There's a systematic lack of responsibility held by teenagers in our society such that any driven, motivated individual is aberrant. For the entirety of human history, people past the age of 14 or 15 were treated as responsible adults, but nowadays, many are coddled well into their 20s. I think it leaves people unable to ultimately become responsible members of society, and it's managed to create a positive feedback loop. Society doesn't give teenagers responsibility, so they become irresponsible, making society view them as unable to hold responsibility, and to withdraw even more. The expectations placed upon the average teenager typically involves not getting wasted or high on school nights and avoiding trouble with the police. Good grades are nice too, but maybe you can't manage to do your homework because you're meant for better things. This, instead of a system that existed even until the early 20th century. Make your way in the world or get left behind. I don't advocate a return to this system, but I do believe that more responsibility needs to be placed on young adults in order to foster their development into effective members of society. This is true. If you want them to be able to take responsibility, you need to trust them with some. The fact that it takes a bachelor's degree to babysit ticks me off. I'm trying to find a summer job and I can't get anything because I have no experience. But how do I get experience if I can't start anywhere? The fact that I'm 19 and get put in a group with 14 and 15-year-olds. Also, my senior year of high school, I had to ask to go to the bathroom. Now in college, no one gives a crap, and I'm solely responsible for myself. How does high school prepare me for college again? School is basically pointless, and going to college doesn't guarantee you the ultimate high-paying 9-to-5 anymore. Just because I know people will be like, your education is important, school is very good. Shut up. Learning is what's important, and that doesn't go on a whole lot in school anymore. And I know this gets said a lot by kids that slack in school to excuse themselves for being lazy and stupid, but I'm an AB student and I agree that a grade doesn't define anyone's intelligence. Yet, grades are all that's supposed to matter to kids these days. It's really pretty stupid, especially considering how little most college degrees do for us nowadays. The people suck. My bio teacher would put my classmates and myself down every day. People would report her all the time, and nothing happened. Finally, one day, I was like, I'm done. I'm making it stop. I recorded her on my phone, which is apparently called unlawful wiretap, yet I was in a public setting. Anyway, I caught so much stuff that she even downright refused to teach us anymore. Yeah, some kids in the class didn't always pay attention, but what she did was way overboard. She got suspended until we left her class. She took me to court. Since I didn't have a malicious intent, I get to go on a lovely program called diversion. I have to basically be on probation until November, and I have to do 30 hours of community service. All because I recorded my teacher to show the administration. I've never been in any sort of trouble. The school cop even got a good word out about me. I actually tried to be decent to this teacher, even though I hated her, and now she's talking crap about me. So much so that someone from my mom's job said that she called us degenerates. Just childish. And she's supposed to be the adult. One day, I got a large door jammed between my toes and punched a kid in the face, and he let it go. In that situation, I was definitely in the wrong and got nothing. The one where I feel I did the right thing, I got punished. I just hate people. This is just unfortunate to hear, honestly. It's the administration that should be doing something about the teacher that's causing problems. And you shouldn't get in trouble for doing what was necessary to prove to them that this was going on when they weren't doing their jobs properly to begin with. I hate the stereotyping of teenagers. People think all teenagers are obsessed with is swag and Instagram. Me and a lot of other teenagers are not like that. I also don't like when adults think my points are invalid because I'm 14. There are absolutely 14-year-olds with more common sense than people in their 30s, and sometimes you need to acknowledge that. The amount of general expectations of you, at least in the US, everyone who wants to succeed has to play 3 sports, play a musical instrument, get a 4.0 GPA, do way too many hours of community service, and still get 10 hours of sleep a night. I call bull on that. How being smart is frowned upon by other teenagers. Seriously, how often do you see reading or actually being intelligent as something a cool person does? No, they're always smoking and partying and drinking at age 15, and stupid things like that. In a few years, you're gonna come to learn that the word cool doesn't mean what you think it means.
What's one thing from the 1990s that will never be popular again? Being in front of the TV with friends and family at a certain time to watch a certain show, and if you missed it, you missed it. Free AOL Frisbees in the mail. Here's $20. I'll pick you up at 8 when the mall closes. Don't talk to strangers. Payphones. Really hoping parachute pants come back? Personally, I've got a soft spot for Jinko jeans. Pogs, even if Alf comes back for it.
Hey Bart, you know Alf? He's back in Pog form.
The golden age of shareware, the idea of actually owning the software you buy and decent file sharing through Napster before companies inundated LimeWire and the like with virus-infected decoy seeds. Get off the internet, I need to use the phone! Yo, MTV Raps.
Palm Pilots.
What the figgity-uck is a Palm Pilot? Oh, a PDA. I'd see them around a lot, and I remember wanting one real badly, but I wouldn't know what it was for, and why the hell would I even have one, because I was a feral ADHD goblin child. Phone booths. Rewatching The Matrix is a constant reminder of this. The film still holds up incredibly well, but the technology doesn't so much unless you can suspend your belief for the time period. See, when I was a kid, I thought The Matrix was cool. I especially thought that Matrix 2 Reloaded was cool, but now I'm older, I don't really like the films anymore. Purchased cell phone ringtones. You have received a collect call from, "Hey mom, I'm fine and going to a friend's house." Burning CDs for every occasion and writing said occasion on CD with Sharpie. Honestly, I think that's a nice, charming way of just cataloging memories and important moments in your life that are connected to a song. Y2K hype. There were a ton of futuristic shows and movies about the net. Let's just say it turned out differently and less cool than portrayed. Not really a 90s show or anything, or even franchise, but Mega Man Battle Network I always thought had like a pretty cool impression of the internet. Like with the net navies and everything. Tamagotchi. Hope for the future. I don't see Discmans making a comeback or those white seashell and coral necklace things everyone had, boys and girls both. Surprisingly, rollerblading seems to be making a bit of a comeback though. I see them at skate parks now quite often. They actually rip too, grinding flat bars and stuff. Remember free refills at coffee shops and ashtrays on every table? Affordable housing, hope, progress, an idea of a better and happy future for all mankind. Jinko jeans. Not having a cell phone or anyone expecting you to have a phone on you at all times. VHS tapes and DVDs. Oh, we'll see who has the last laugh when the world goes to pot, the internet goes down, rendering the streaming services useless, and then I'm there with my Malcolm in the Middle all seasons DVD box set, my bicycle hooked up to a generator so I can power my TV and DVD player. We'll see who has the last laugh. But for real, DVDs are super cool. Physical media is king, and sometimes they come with really cool bonuses like behind-the-scenes information and whatnot, which can be really fun to look into. First-run syndication TV shows. Back in the late 80s and early 90s, there were really only three major networks, ABC, NBC, CBS, with PBS and Fox having just launched. But Fox was still a very new thing that struggled to fill airtime. There were a lot of independent TV stations, though, that aired mostly reruns, old movies, game shows, etc. Then, Star Trek The Next Generation premiered in '87 as a first-run syndication show, meaning it aired on whatever local network wanted to pay for the rights on any day at any time. It was a huge success, and suddenly there was a ton of action-adventure shows going to first-run syndication. Those local stations that had nothing to show on certain nights loved it. Baywatch was directly syndicated and was one of the most watched TV shows in the world for one point. Then there was Xena, Hercules, ST, DS9, Babylon 5, Relic Hunter, Viper, and just a ton of other light-hearted action-adventure TV that doesn't really exist anymore. As a 90s kid, it was great. When UPN and the WB formed, a lot of those independent stations didn't need to fill airtime anymore. By 2000, the market had shrunk, and today with streaming, it's gone for good. Those t-shirts that reacted to heat and changed color? It turns out that bright purple armpits never became acceptable. I think the brand was Global Hypercolor. One of those inventions. Just because you can make it doesn't mean you should. I don't know, those shirts sound kinda cool actually, just on the concept alone. The creation of a major television network, or the attempt to do so. After Fox succeeded in the mid-80s to create the Big Four, and remember that PBS counts as a major as well, you saw attempts like the WB, UPN, and their merger in the CW. With streaming services, weblets, and specialized networks that only deal with a single topic, like the Weather Channel and ESPN, proliferating the airwaves, there's never going to be an appetite for another major network, or the rationale present to develop the funding necessary to create and sustain it until it becomes self-supporting. Not in the reality we're all currently living in. To do so, you have to have several things: a national news division, a dedicated sports division, a production division capable of turning out massive amounts of sustainable content, and it has to be scripted as well as non-scripted content, or reality television as it's called. A schedule that covers the entire week for at least 8 to 12 hours of original content daily, and a national network of television affiliates that broadcast your content. And in the cases of your news division, represent your main network in that affiliate's broadcast area. I remember how difficult it was for Fox back in the 80s, but as a fellow student in radio and television pointed out to me, they have a national news division, a weekly schedule, content, and local affiliates nationwide. Don't let anyone fool you, they are a network. And it's never going to happen again. Okay, being a media student, I find this stuff really interesting. I was not expecting a double feature on things like, about syndication and how Fox established itself as a giant network or whatever, but I don't think I completely agree with the idea that there'll never be a new TV network or something like that, because streaming platforms, from what I can tell, while they are somewhat profitable, they just don't seem like they're as profitable anymore as people like to think, and they're very restrictive business-wise because the instant that you try to change anything, people are really finicky with it. It's like, I thought I was going to get everything all at once in a week, and now more and more shows are going back to releasing an episode a week or something. Or the fact that all of them are now trying to make more money off of people by restricting how many people can really have an account at once, I wouldn't be surprised if regular old TV made a comeback eventually. Limp Bizkit. They're one of the few bands unable to capitalize on nostalgic fans and have to cancel their last 2 tours for safety concerns and personal health reasons, which methinks is face-saving code for poor ticket sales. I actually rather like Limp Bizkit, and after they've said that, I might see if they're touring through England. Running home from the playground to watch and record your favorite cartoons on the VHS, spending hours at the video store, or reserving your favorite movies in advance. I still remember the 2+1 deal and how happy I was when I got an extra movie. Colored ketchup. Did anyone say Carrot Top yet? Pontiac Sunfire. PlayStation 1. While the PlayStation 1 itself is definitely not going to be making a comeback anytime soon, I do believe that the appeal of low poly graphics, like based on PlayStation 1 graphics, are slowly and gradually becoming more and more popular among people as an aesthetic choice. Smoking in restaurants. Shoulder pads. I could have swore shoulder pads were like a 70s thing. Pet rocks, like the ones that were actually sold. Cereal box prizes that are actually in the box and don't require a sign-up or something. I once got Lion King themed limited edition Pogs from a cereal box, had to save 3 barcodes and mail them in. They were awesome. Otherwise, there was always a gift or toy in the box. I miss those days. Companies don't use promotions like this anymore because they know we'll have to eat anyway. No need to market food anymore or make it appealing or exciting. So sad. Sony Walkman and Discman. Peanut butter and jam in the same jar. For good reason, that sounds awful. Then again, apparently English peanut butter and American peanut butter are 2 completely different beasts. I don't think movies like the original Blair Witch Project 1999 would have the hype it did. The internet changed a lot of things. That website with its lore, hidden secrets, and that most folks then couldn't go Google to see it was obviously fake. The number of people that believed it was real was insane. That would never happen today. Cheat codes and hidden characters are mostly gone now because of the internet. The secrets to unlock hidden characters in Mortal Kombat 1 and 2 were all word of mouth. When playing Tears of the Kingdom, I can literally find out every secret item on launch day. Very different from the original Legend of Zelda, where you had a map of the overworld that came with the game and were told, good luck. And yeah, it is too easy to complete games nowadays with the internet. Even I'm guilty of using the internet when I get really, really stuck in a game somewhere, though. What I really hate, though, is when games nowadays glitch out so badly that they just stop you from progressing, and you're like, what am I doing wrong? And then you get told, oh, you've just glitched. Other people have had the same problem. Oh, that's a good one, actually. Games being made and shipped as complete products worthy of the price you're paying day one. Having a face and body that hasn't been altered in some way or filtered and edited in photos. I remember when the furthest we would go to deceive people about our appearance was wearing a push-up bra. Yeah, filters are just super lame nowadays, and plus, let's be honest, I think people have trained their eyes now to be able to tell when a filter is being used. Smoking the devil's lettuce from an aluminium can. Furbies. Mofos being sensitive about everything. Play-Doh, Slinkies, boy bands, video rental stores, Will and Jada Smith. Laserdisc, Trapper Keepers, Paul Frank brand. I feel like there only used to be 15 famous people. Nowadays there are 100,000 famous people that you've never heard of. Polaroid nudes from your significant other. Teachers telling students that they can't speak a language other than English in class because I know you're talking about me. Prank calls before caller ID. Talking to your beloved on a landline with your family listening in because the only phone in the house is in your living room and your granny is making pumping motions with her hips whilst the rest of your family is giggling in the background. Screw that. Nah, mate, you just can't take the banter. Not sure if it was popular exactly due to limited release, but OK Cola. It was okay. My college roommate and I used to call the 1800 number repeatedly to hear OK jokes or get free coupons. We loved it. Probably everything I just said will never return. Human decency. There are far too many people going for imaginary internet points these days. Luckily, Eurodance boy bands phenomena like Take That and Backstreet Boys, Unlucky, Grunge, and Nirvana, Movie Phone, Aquanet, payphones, and phone books. When you think about the level of convenience that we have compared to, say, the 80s or even the 90s or 2000s even, it is crazy. Checking the free TV guide from the Sunday paper to find out which of the Cinemax or Showtime was going to have a softcore smut that shows breasts after your parents went to bed. Wait, maybe that was the late 80s.
Blockbuster, Purple Tomato Sauce, Saturday Disney cartoons, Moon Boots, Pogs, Orbit Soda, Dial-Up Internet, Portable CD players, WCW, Tamagotchis, and Fanny Packs.
In England, we call them bum bags because 1, fanny pack sounds stupid, and 2, well, it's kind of a gendered word here in England. Lunch tickets. Back then, we'll get a yellow and black ticket calendar to get our food, and we had to give them to a ticketer. Green, yellow, and red cards for behavior. This was elementary. If your card was green, you'll get a surprise or some sort of pizza party. If your card was red, you'll get no pizza party, nor prize, and you'll do standards. Yellow was like a warning to get your act together. Spinner rims, like what were people thinking? Real comedy. I feel like you can't push boundaries anymore. Drawing animation. Long, dumb arguments about some trivia where there was no clear answer, so everyone left still believing they were right. When I was in middle school, you couldn't just pull out your smartphone to Google if Marilyn Manson actually removed a set of ribs so he could suck his own mini Manson. Hit shows with 1990s TV production value. There was such a vast difference between TV and movies. Shows like X-Files and NYPD Blue were very much exceptions in terms of production value. Most stuff looked cheap and shoddy. I mean, me personally, I would rather pick classic Magnum P.I. over, say, the more recent CWDC shows, because, God, those look awful now. I remember when my friends were raving about how good Arrow or maybe even The Flash were back in the 20-teens or whatever. But now, God, they have fallen. Those big wooden roundabouts with no seats or handles. Kids actually being kids. I loved running around the small green with my school pals. The whole "I'll be back when the streetlights come on" is a way of knowing what time we had to be home. The fact that social skills were an actual thing. The lack of mind-numbing tech. And Snake. If you're wondering and don't know what he means by Snake, it's basically an old game. I used to be with it. Then they changed what it was. Now what I'm with isn't it, and what is it seems weird and scary to me. It'll happen to you. Very, very underrated Simpsons quote in my opinion. Lead paint poisoning. I remember always seeing lawyer commercials about getting compensation. Not pleasant, but popular. Absolute golden age of Cartoon Network and Adult Swim. So many classic cartoons were created at that time. Unfortunately, my eyeballs would not wipe their butts with Cartoon Network at this point. I'm not sure if they mean like Cartoon Network or Adult Swim being at their best anymore, because I don't know, the characters and cartoons of the 90s are still revered to this day. I mean, there was that cartoon recently called Jellystone, I think, which is literally just all of the Hanna-Barbera cartoons, save for Scooby-Doo, I think. Living in a town, and I think they gender swapped a bunch of the characters because otherwise it would just be a huge sausage fest. Out of the Hanna-Barbera cartoons, I rather like Top Cat and Snagglepuss. Don't know why they're both cats, but I always liked it when Snagglepuss went, "Heavens to Murgatroyd!" Anyone remember the Hanna-Barbera Cartoon Olympics? Having an attention span, like even just watching TV without constantly checking the phone to look up something. Well, you see, buddy, you're talking to the wrong guy here, cause I was born with ADHD. I've never had an attention span. Shell suits, hopefully. Jimmy Savile. For those of you who don't know who Jimmy Savile is, you're probably American or something like that. Basically, he was a BBC presenter who got caught being a kiddie diddler. I say caught, but it was more that everyone knew he was a kiddie diddler, but he had so much influence and power, essentially, as a celebrity, like one of the biggest celebrities in the UK for a time, I think, that basically no one could do anything about it until he died, and then basically everything spilled out about how the BBC colluded with him and stuff like that. It was a whole frickin' thing when it happened. That one phone line that you would call and they would tell you the time. TV shows only having 3 commercials for a break. Then it went to 6. Going to clubs and raves with huge sound systems until 6 a.m., the UK government put laws in place to stop people openly partying all night long. From what I can tell from watching old shows, basically calling people gay as though it's top banter. I would say jelly shoes because of how goddamn uncomfortable they were, but they're back. Pages and everyone having a code so you knew who was paging you. Wearing clothes backwards, it was a whole vibe. I just don't believe you. I don't believe that wearing your clothes backwards was ever a vibe. Flip phones? Well, you say that, and yet the Samsung flip phone came out a couple years ago, and I absolutely love mine. Like when I finally moved on from my 90s Nokia flip phone to whatever the hell I got in 2013 as my first actual my new phone or whatever, I was just there like, man, I wish this was a flip phone. And then finally in 2022 or 2021, Samsung answered my prayers and I frickin' love it. Having a low spending market, everything seems to be increasing by the day. Vanilla Ice. Hip hugger pants with a thong peeking out. Very common in the mid to late 90s. Visiting people in person randomly. Like people would just drop by or we'd be out and stop by to see a friend. We were more hospitable, had more free time, and there was no cell phone, so it wasn't like you could call, so expectations were different. You know, when I first read that, I thought it said randomly visiting people in prison. I was like, what? Having to wait till 9 to call your girlfriend so you could get free minutes? Apparently, gaming in person with 2 players. I'm told you need separate consoles now. That actually annoys me nowadays with all of like the development that we've made in gaming and technology in gaming and whatnot. Multiplayer is kind of stagnant, especially local co-op and everything. Like as someone who is a younger brother and whose brother didn't want to play games with him or like, you know, he played single player games all the time. I wanted more games where I could actually like play through the entire game with my brother or my friends or whatever. It's just something that I think more games need to concentrate on. Flesh out multiplayer mechanics for God's sake.
Afraid of the dark on Nickelodeon.
It is impossible to explain to someone who wasn't there how cool the Macarena was the first week. The Jerry Springer Show. Gas was 89 cents a gallon and cigarettes were $9.99 a carton. Inflation's a female dog, honey. Internet cafes with full tables of boxy desktop computers and you had to like pay by the hour to use it sometimes. I used to love this skeezy internet cafe that I used to go to with my friends. We'd play Call of Duty, S4 League, Dawn of War, or like mods of Warcraft with One Piece and Bleach characters. And they'd host all-nighters once a week on a Friday and you'd be there till like 6 a.m. playing whatever the hell you want and they'd give us the keys and people would make like snack runs and everything. Man, those were good times. Animorphs books and the short-lived TV show. I think someone's making like a comic that's still going now actually of Animorphs. Hamster dance. Really elaborate home theater setups, component stereo systems. In mainstream use, I know there are still niche enthusiasts. Our first house was pre-wired in the family room for surround sound speakers. I would actually love a home theater system. Doing research using encyclopedias and dictionaries. Excessively violent, borderline hentai anime. Oh yeah, they don't make them like they used to. I remember watching the frickin' Guyver on a VHS when I was a kid with my mom and stuff. That was crazy. It was literally the show that told me or showed me that heroes don't always win. Or something like Ninja Scroll, which, God, do not watch Ninja Scroll if you have a weak constitution and are afraid of, well, some pretty violent and horrible sexual stuff going on, because I remember when I was 13 years old, my mom's friend was like, oh, he likes anime? I got him an anime DVD. Didn't even bother to look at the fact that it was an 18 plus. Also, please, believe me, I know some of you hate when I do too much commentary on these, but if I weren't doing this, I would literally be saying POG about 1,000 more times. Late-night TV psychics, Miss Cleo, Sylvia Brown, John Edward, etc. Some of them couldn't even predict their own demise. Apparently Surge, the gateway soda to a booger sugar habit. Life. Back in the 90s, life was so much better for a lot of reasons. We were much happier than today and we didn't have technology. We had more privacy than today before social media came by. Things were cheaper than today. My parents used to buy the newspaper for 15 cents back then. Today, it's €1.50 for the daily one. As a kid, I was much happier meeting other kids at school and we used to play a lot. Something like a shoebox was like winning the lottery. School used to be more exciting than today. I loved coloring books as a child. There weren't any automated phone systems back then, and you used to get on the phone with a company with ease. Everyone used to go outside for services, and we used to meet a lot of people, have a chat, and I used to play with anything. Riding the bus used to cost 15 cents. Today it's €2 before the government made them free. McDonald's used to be like a Disneyland to me. The toys used to be like winning the lottery. Street food like pasties used to cost 8 cents, and I used to eat 2 of them, and they were pretty good. Today you need to spend 60 cents for 1 pasty. TV shows were better than today's. I really loved Power Rangers and Baywatch, and I still love them till this day. MTV used to be about music and not reality shows. It used to be exciting. You didn't need to pay to watch TV back then, and it used to be good. Today, to watch TV, you have to pay only to see garbage being aired on the television. I do think that ever since modern technology emerged and life became faster, it's no longer the life I once knew. Everything is becoming boring nowadays. Inflation is a real female dog. Life was so much better back then. I still miss the 90s. Like, no duh, inflation sucks, and yeah, of course, everyone's gonna miss the times when they were younger and everything, and happier and whatnot because they were a kid. It's nostalgia and whatnot. I think the most probably profound thing that they said was about how the rapid expansion of technology, fast living, and things like people being made redundant from simple jobs like phone lines and everything. I hate it when they put me through to a robot when I want to talk to a person who could fix my very, very specific problem that the robot or whatever, or the automated phone system just doesn't give me the option to do. But I guess I'll stop there because the deeper I get into that topic, the more depressed I'll become. Good night, all!
What screams I peaked in high school? Getting the score of the football game you won against the school's rival tattooed on your shoulder. When I was in high school, this guy a year before me had a fearsome reputation. At house parties, people would fear him just by name alone. He would show up to parties with his cronies and start fights. He came from a decent enough family. Everybody wanted to be on his good side. Anyway, he graduates high school, and most of us were still in 12th grade. I remember he used to come around lunchtime to smoke with the people out front, shoot the breeze, and talk about how much fun it is to sleep in and do nothing and have all this freedom. A couple of months of, oh, cool, to, why are you still here, as we awkwardly shuffled back to class. Some of the popular kids from high school still get together very frequently, and you see updates of it on Facebook. I also keep touch with some friends from high school, and I think that that's nice. However, one of those friends of mine once ran into them during one of their get-togethers. He said hi and happened to be sitting not too far from them at the bar. He said that all they did for the whole night was talk about high school. They looked up old classmates on Facebook, laughed at them, called them names, looked at their spouses, and called them names too. They still thought themselves the popular kids, as if they still had some sort of influence on all these people. Everyone has moved on, done interesting things in their life except for them. They're just rehashing old drama and old rumors. One of those girls had a small bit of success as a photographer in high school. She won a couple contests that were aimed at teenagers, and her photos weren't bad. Her parents turned this into a very big deal. Her friends all wanted to be in her photos, and she was dead set on going to art school and getting the recognition she deserved. I don't know if she ever made it into art school or if she dropped out, but she definitely did not become a photographer. Instead, you see her launching some new startup business selling asinine live, laugh, love crap about once a year. I dated a guy with this high school mascot tattooed on his arm. It was such a turnoff. A guy who graduated from my high school back in 2003 was arrested a few years ago for his second DUI. He was wearing his Letterman jacket in his mugshot. At my 10-year reunion, the prom queen came wearing a tiara with a custom Queen 03 sash over her shoulder. I had to go outside, I was laughing so hard. But I'll be danged if she didn't rock that outfit the whole time, so respect. Still sad though. We used to play indoor floor hockey in a loft room in the big gym of my middle school. One game I scored 3 goals, one of them being a bank shot off the wall. The next year, I wrote about the game for an assignment in English class, and the teacher read it to the class the next day. I'm not sure which one was my peak. Still bullying the nerds at your 10-year reunion. Dropping out of college to promote your pyramid scheme. As someone who recently graduated, the students who returned to the school every time they came home from school just so people would pay attention to them. Also, not sure how to explain it, but the people who now post blank screens and just text on their Snapchat stories that just say things like, always crazy to see who you can really trust when XYZ happens, or surprising to see who really cares about you when you need friends the most. Like I said, I don't know how to explain it, but there's definitely a correlation. I taught at a high school in the US for exactly 1 year. During that year, some guy who had graduated a year or so prior came back to visit about 3 or 4 times. This douche just rolled into the school and would pop into classes to say hi to teachers and students in the middle of lessons. I have no idea why, but for some reason, he was walking around barefoot too. He tried that crap in my class, and I asked him promptly to leave, to which he said to me, "Oh, you're new here, and don't understand that I'm sort of a legend around here, so people like to see me come by." Yeah, I kicked, quote, the legend, the heck out, and promptly advised my students to move on with their lives after they were finished with high school. I knew a girl in college who tried to do the same crap as the other guy I just mentioned, but her old school wouldn't allow her and her friends to even enter the building. She was really mad about it and commented, "How could they do that? We ran that school." That was the saddest thing I'd ever heard someone say. Sharing every memory from Facebook, talking about the good old days and wish we could go back when it's only been a few years since graduation. Filming yourself running drills and throwing footballs off camera in front of your van/mobile home. Selling pot to teenagers and then trying to get them to stay and smoke with you. How do you do, fellow kids? Do you also smoke the marijuana? Want to earn money from home and set your own hours? Edit, thank you for the love, and sorry you all have had that quote, bestie, read, distant acquaintance, reach out to you with a desperate sales pitch. Hey hun, long time no see. I know I bullied the crap out of you in high school, but we're past that now, right? Now, want to buy some terrible overpriced supplements/makeup/essential oils from me? Hashtag boss babe, hashtag be your own boss, hashtag killing it. The class that graduated before me had their 10-year reunion last year, and apparently a big fight broke out over something that happened when they were all still in high school. I guess that's one way to tell if someone peaked in high school. Pretty embarrassing. When I was in high school, the cool kids partied hard. They'd get blackout drunk and used whatever illegal substances they can get. I was looking through some of the profiles of some of those classmates, and a few of them are still doing the same crap. Talking gangsta stuff despite growing up in a middle-class suburb, talking about how they miss their kids who are in CPS custody because they went to jail for using, going on rants about narcs, etc. They're about 27 or 28. What made you cool in high school makes you a loser as a grown adult, especially when you're a parent. Teachers who suck up to the athletes and other popular kids and ignore the less popular kids. Hope you're enjoying the video. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you like Am I the Genius, you'll probably love Am I the Jerk, linked in the description below. I went to school with a girl whose parents graduated from our high school 20 years prior. All 4 members of their family got the school's logo tattooed. Her boyfriend still goes to the football games and reposts his game highlights on Instagram. We're all 21 to 22. I'm from New Mexico and live in the largest city in the state. We've never had a good high school football team, and the BF usually goes to pick up underage girls and brags to everyone about how he was the star football player. If someone from another team makes a really good play, he'll make some kind of remark about how he could have done it better, or he'll go into a detail about his junior varsity football experience. Making any mention of SAT or ACT scores. Bonus points for that IQ test you took when you were a kid online. Man, I remember how much our high school used to stress about ACT scores. It was like putting all your eggs in one basket. They painted this picture of not being able to get into college if you had anything lower than like a 28 or something. And a small rant here, I hate how much of high school was just learning how to take tests. I never absorbed any of the information on the ACT categories, which were math, science, reading, and English. Some of those science graphs would have been genuinely interesting if I weren't under the pressure of taking a test. The ACT and all the prep work boils down to, how do I take this test as efficiently as possible with the time I have? And they wonder why we suck at college. I was in the National Honor Society, so I know a little bit about leadership anytime after high school. Still wearing your Letterman jacket and class ring in your 30s. Talking about high school sports games from a different decade as if they meant something. Still living in your hometown and looking forward to that night at the bar just before Thanksgiving when everyone who left comes home, so you can talk about high school stuff to people who have grown up and have real lives now. I have a good one for this. My cousin once dragged me out to a local bar that I don't particularly care for due to its reputation. But I was going through a separation and figured I could use a night out. A guy comes up to me, clearly already drunk, and belligerently declares, "I've never seen you in here before." I replied, "That's because I've never been in here before." "Well, I'm just saying, I've never seen you here before." "Okay." "I'm John. I used to play football at the school up the road. You know, the school just up the road, up on the hill." "Yes, I know the school. I went to the same school." "Yeah? I played football there." "Good for you." "I don't remember you from school." "I don't imagine you do." "Well, I'm just saying, I played football there and I don't remember you." Finally, he walked away. More like stumbled away. This was back in around 2013. I graduated in 2004. He was 1 or 2 years ahead of me. So it had been over a decade since he graduated, and he was using his high school football to hit on chicks at the bar. He moved on to hit on my cousin, so I pretended to be her lesbian lover to chase him off. She thanked me for it. Guy is a total tool and always was. Edit, I seem to be catching a little flack from a few people for being, quote, rude myself. I left a portion of the conversation out to avoid being too long-winded. I did ask him if he remembered a secretary at the school, and he started trash-talking her. I told him she was my mother. He paused, at least he stopped trash-talking mom, and then cycled back to not remembering me belligerently. To add a bit more context, I remembered him from school from a different belligerent encounter. He randomly said to me one day, "You're like some kind of pothead, right?" I said no and asked why he thought that. He explained that I hung out with a few known potheads. I did, and that must mean I was a pothead too. So I explained that they were just my friends, and just because they smoked didn't mean I had to do it too, and that I didn't, which was the truth. He repeated the notion that I must be because of who I hung out with, so I explained again that I didn't. He finally dropped the subject. This dude has always been belligerent, douchey, repetitive, and incapable of carrying a conversation. Hope this info and context clarifies things. My friends used to get together to play Halo, the old 4-person split-screen multiplayer, and they destroy me every time. Now, we've all moved away, and we play shooters together online occasionally. I win almost every time now that they can't see my screen. Those suckers' screen peaked in high school. I'm mad. I'm mad about this pun. Dying before graduation. Yeah, okay. That mean you peak in high school by default, huh? A guy graduated 2 years before me, in 2006. He got a job as a school narc my senior year. Basically, a job that is somewhere below security and barely a step above student. We had our 10-year reunion last year in the school gymnasium, and there he was, with the sunglasses on at 8 p.m., sporting a sweet Flavor Saver and Dickie shorts, with his black socks pulled up to his knees, as was the fashion for all the bros at my high school when we attended. He was making the rounds, trying to enforce every single rule that was imposed on students. Meanwhile, we are all 27 to 29 years old, and nobody is taking his crap. Eventually, someone told him, "You were a tool in high school. Nothing has changed. Get lost, narc." He then started listing every girl he, quote, boned in high school. It was hard watching that guy spiral so hard while everyone was laughing at him. Edit. A Flavor Saver is a nickname we gave for the patch of hair that grows directly under your bottom lip. It's a Flavor Saver because when you go down on a woman, the juice gets in there and can taste it later. I hated reading that. It's just a joke we'd say because it was very popular amongst the bro crowd in high school. Basically, a guy who tries way too hard. Because they couldn't grow beards or mustaches but could attain one of those. I have a friend. We'll call him Dave. That isn't his name because his family is Iranian, but we'll call him Dave. I also went to school with another person who I'll call Jerkhead, because he's a jerkhead. He refused to be called by his actual name anyway, and insisted on being called by his nickname, which for the purposes of this tale, we shall call Massive Wanker. Dave applied for a job and got it. It was a pretty serious gig, a finance job that paid extremely well. He got it and arrived for his first day. The guy who hired him showed him around the building, then showed him to his desk and introduced him to his immediate manager. It was Jerkhead. This was literally about 15 years after we'd left school, and everyone who wasn't a follow Jerkhead thought Jerkhead was far in the past. Nope. Dave said, "Oh, hi Jerkhead." Jerkhead replied, "It's actually Massive Wanker, if you don't mind." Dave said, "What? Still?" He then went down to the lobby and paced around for 10 minutes and then just walked out. Nobody wants Jerkhead to be their boss. Dave now works elsewhere and seems happy. Jerkhead, however, no idea. Don't care. Why? Because he's a proper freaking jerkhead. A football coach at my high school held a record as a linebacker for when he was in high school in the 80s. One kid a few years ago on the first-string varsity team came 30 yards away from breaking that record, and the coach promptly took him out of the game and kept him for the rest of the season. Only one game left at that point, so no one could break his record from 30 years ago. One of the few good things, maybe the only good thing, about the UK's usually screwed education system is that hardly anyone, except those who have had an expensive private education, gives a crap about their old school. No loyalty to the old school. Sports loyalty when at school was practically non-existent. No one, apart from those on the teams, usually gave a single crap about how the sports teams did. No yearbooks, no jackets, no proms. At least when I went to school, the aberration seems to be creeping in now. No one gives a crap. School reunions are rare if a thing at all here. I still know and see a few of my classmates or ones who were at school when I was there, but only because they still live locally and it's not that big a place. The others, I have no idea where they are, how they are, even if they're still alive, and with maybe 2 or 3 exceptions, have no great wish to find out. Still drinking in the same pub you drank in as a student, because that's now full of students. So you're that guy or girl who never left home and drinks with school kids much younger than you. Never advancing your life past the moment when you graduate. I have a cousin who still lives with his parents, has had the same job he had since junior year, and has done nothing else with his life. Alternatively, I have a cousin the same age still living with his mom, but he's going to college and taking care of his grandmother. I think he wants to make it big as a concept artist, but he's working on a fallback degree before he makes the big leap. Huge difference. See, living with parents isn't a bad thing. America is kinda unique in how it treats that. Because you'll find that in a lot of European and Asian countries, people will stay with their parents into like their 30s, and even start their own new families to stay, rather than just saying, "You're 18 now, screw off and have fun." That being said, people in those situations are the second scenario, because they're still trying to support themselves and take care of family. Really aggressive sport parents. I stayed at the same hotel as a Little League team, and there wasn't a single parent that I didn't despise. Your only friends are from high school. You tell your college grad older brother, yes, you got a math-heavy degree, but in high school, I took Algebra 2 and you took geometry like everyone else looking for the easy path. Says to older brother, everyone looked down on you in high school. Gets ticked when older brother says, you are 38, you graduated 20 years ago, please tell me you have something to be proud of from the past 2 decades. That's oddly specific, dude. You want to talk about it? Are you projecting a little bit there, bud? You need to talk to someone about that? Want to see my prom pictures? I used to be so fit back in high school. You should have seen me play ball back in the day. I probably could have gone to play college. Want to see my highlight reel? I had a guy every other week when I was a teenager. Look how skinny I was back then. I was cheer captain of my high school. I made sure people feared me when I walked the halls. It's like, okay, we get it. You were popular and feared. We're nearly 30 now. Get over yourself. I work in HR and once had a resume that mentioned the applicant had been the captain of the local high school football team. He was in his 50s at the time he submitted this application. In the wise words of my bowels after I have Taco Bell, sometimes you just gotta let that crap go. I did some work at a guy's house when I was about 20 when I was on summer break from college. I was doing some landscaping and such. This guy was a cop, about 35, and was married with a pretty nice house. I would work there, and he would pop over to the house once or twice a day for lunch or whatever, and would check on how the work was going. But one day, he tells me to come to the garage with him. He is searching around the garage for something, but won't tell me what. Finally, he finds a box with his old homecoming crown from high school when he was named Homecoming King. He started talking about how high school was such great memories and all that. He was trying to show off and thought I'd be really impressed, but I was really embarrassed for him, to be honest. My mom, a 42-year-old, has a giant stack of numbers that boys gave her in high school. She brings them out to brag every now and then. It's embarrassing. A Slipknot tattoo, an older model Honda Civic, and an assistant manager job at Pizza Hut. The Civic has nothing to do with this, and you will leave that poor little well-built car alone. A high school teacher who berates a student, me, for deciding not to go to prom. You're going to regret it for the rest of your life. I see why you became a high school psychology teacher. I'm late to the party, but a former coworker of mine, who just turned 45 years old, posts pictures and messages about him and his brother breaking track records in high school. Sometimes it's a picture of almost 30-year-old newspaper clippings, other times it's trophies, or maybe it's a nostalgic message of wanting to go back in time to high school and being the greatest again. He also likes to mention one of his records is still unbroken. I wished he had cared about his job performance as much as his track and field record. My time working with him would have been much less stressful. Loud mufflers and revving your engines on residential streets. I live in the South, so every single Ford F-150 I see driving in my town? Gather round, kids. This one is freaking weird. About 10 years ago, I briefly toyed with the idea of moving from New Jersey back to my crappy town in Pennsylvania. My job sucked. I needed a change of scenery, and there was this really good opportunity, surprisingly, back in that crappy town. We're talking $10K more in pay, cheaper living, closer to family, and what few friends I had left from high school. This, I should note, was when I still had my high school on my resume. I show up for the interview, and the hiring manager has a shrine to our high school in his office. Football jersey bearing his name is framed and hanging above his desk. He has pencil cups with the school crest on it. He has mugs bearing the school name. The first thing that jumps out at me is, where did you get all this crap? We didn't have a bookstore. I have no idea how you would acquire a high school mug or a pencil cup. Yet, there they were. This guy was elated when I sat down and began talking about high school, asking me if certain teachers he had were still there when I went. He had about 25 years on me. Some of them were, as they were fresh out of college when he was in high school. After about a half hour, I ask him if he has any questions about, my experience or skills. He waves his hand and says, "Nah man, don't worry about it. You can handle this job." Sends me to get fingerprinted for the background check and tells me he'll call in 2 to 3 weeks once the background check is done with my start date. 3 weeks pass, no contact. He isn't responding to my calls. Finally, I catch him on the phone and he's apologetic. Surely I would understand, however, that he simply had to hire the guy who came in after me. He hired some kid who had gone to the same high school but actually played football. The job required a bachelor's degree, quote, or equivalent. Kid had just been kicked out of college, it was in the papers. For an inappropriate assault, he was able to plead down to a misdemeanor. The hiring manager, in yet a new level of unprofessionalism, is telling me all about this, but adding that even though he doesn't have his degree, he has 3 years of college plus all that leadership experience from playing football, so it's equivalent. But hey, no hard feelings, dude. I should add that this guy went to Penn State. He also had a law degree from Temple. I only knew this because of his LinkedIn. He had no diplomas or college swag in his office. Now, I'm all about being proud of your alma mater if that sort of thing matters to you. It just boggles my mind that the last time this guy felt so proud was freaking high school football. Not when he graduated from one of the most well-known, thanks to football, sort of, state schools around. Not when he earned a law degree from a respected Philadelphia law school. Nope. This guy's proudest achievement was playing on the football team of a small Catholic high school that won a championship 2 times in the 45 years that it was open. Honestly, I feel like I dodged a bullet. I don't think I could have taken talking about high school every day. Found a better job anyway, and never went back to that town even for a visit.
Reddit, what are some college majors that should definitely be avoided? If you're a journalism major, getting involved in student publications and media is way more important than classes. Journalists aren't hired based off their degree, but how well acclimated they are to newsrooms, deadlines, and things like that. You can't learn the trade in a classroom, only in the field. Classes are just to help you refine your skills and the little things. Standalone language majors. How are you, a student learning a language in less than 4 years, going to compete with a bilingual speaker who also has skills for the workforce? You have to pair it with something else. If you want to major in a language, you double major. I was looking for this one. I cannot tell you how many people major in a language without studying abroad and think they're going to be able to move to that country and work there. I did German and linguistics, double major, and am doing my master's in Germany with the intention of teaching English as a second language. Some of my friends just majored in French or German and planned on moving over here and getting any kind of job. This isn't something I've ever thought about, but makes a lot of sense when you lay it out like that. General studies. Just pick a major. Being undecided all 4 years won't look great on your first resume unless you leave undergrad with some amazing experience that translates into an immediate position. I was a history major. 'Twas fun, but no money. Now I'm a zookeeping major. Tons more fun and even less money. If you don't plan on getting at least a master's degree, avoid psychology. I've known several servers, bartenders, and receptionists that have their degree in psychology, even a few that have ended up in retail. Not that I look down on those jobs, just that they clearly don't require a psychology degree. To get a job in the field, you pretty much need to have a master's at least. Art history. My current roommate, out of college now, was an art history major. She doesn't do any art herself, she just really likes art. Spends a lot of her weekends going to museums and galleries. She can't find a job in what she wants to do. Has an entry-level position as an office administrator, and she hates it. She can't really move up much in her company because she doesn't have the knowledge of the industry she's in. She went to a private university for it, and will be paying off loans for a long time. This is one that before even coming to this thread, I heard was a rough one to try and get a job with. Be careful when studying music. Most universities offer music performance and music education. Getting a bachelor's in music education means you're certified to teach at a school, and therefore has a lot more potential of getting you a job. Music performance just means you got really good at playing your instrument. You'll still have job options such as giving lessons, starting your own studio, joining a professional symphony, or just being a freelance musician. But those all have varying levels of difficulty and instability. For example, to get into a symphony, you have to be the best of the best, at least for top-tier symphonies. So your probability of being hired depends solely on your audition. And to be a freelance musician means that there may be periods where you're unemployed. And even when you are hired by someone, you'll go most of the time without insurance or a retirement fund. And then you have to factor in the location you're in. If you're in an area that's musically dry, you won't be finding any paying gigs unless you're a teacher. There may be plenty of people wanting your services like churches, community bands, and musical pit orchestras, but you probably won't get paid. Yeah, unfortunately, artists and musicians have it rough nowadays, especially based on your area. Non-accredited majors. Even if it sounds like a good degree, mechanical engineering for example, it might not be accredited, meaning it doesn't hold anywhere near the value. I'm only using mechanical engineering as an example. This is normally an issue with university programs that are new, which means that their program normally wouldn't have accreditation. It would be in the application process. It's quite the gamble when you're a new student, because if they don't get accreditation by the time you graduate, you're SOL. Yeah, that would be the last thing you want, is to waste a whole bunch of money on a class that literally means nothing to anyone. Biology. Unless you want to go to med/farm/vet school or graduate school. A BS in biology won't get you very far, and you'll max out in earning potential early on. A lot of bio majors go back for their MS or PhD because they're stuck at low pay scale. If you already know that's what you want to do, you're fine. Make sure you do a BS and not a BA though. Don't do something you dislike because you think it's a good career path. Work is going to be a major part of your life, so aiming for something you can't stand doing is a bad idea. I'm fighting with that sort of. I decided to major in something I love, but I hate it now because it's becoming a career instead of a hobby. The career I want is generally lower pay, but I'd rather major in that because I'd actually be happy. This is the conflict I think a lot of college students go through. There's the thing that you want to do, but you kind of don't want to do it as a job because then you won't want to do it anymore. Versus the thing that you don't want to do, but it pays really well. I don't know. It's a tough decision to make either way. My last job was at a gas station chain, and I met at least 3 hourly gas station managers who had biology master's degrees. Blew my mind that they were attempting to pay down $120,000 worth of loans on $20 an hour. Everyone I know with a bio or biochem master's is employed in research or by private firms. What the heck were your coworkers doing? Criminal justice. It seems to be the new default major for people who don't actually know what they want to do now that psychology is out of vogue. I work at a courthouse and I never graduated college. Most of the new people are trying to get in with criminal justice degrees because it'll look good on their resume, and there are a ton of people applying with that major. Very competitive. Criminal justice sounds like something that would be useful if you're going for something in the law field, but maybe not? I don't know. It's not always just about the major, but what else you do in school. I got my degree in anthropology, which as a bachelor's doesn't mean much in itself. But I managed to get into courses where I did actual research and got my name co-published in a couple professional journals. That was something I've been able to market to employers as much, if not more, than the degree. Same thing goes for something often badmouthed, like women's studies. I have 2 close friends who went that route and are both employed in careers. Women's studies, not STEM, prepared them to go on to get social work degrees, which is where they now make their living. Agreed. An in-demand major helps, but doesn't mean jack if you don't put in the work to network and intern. A crappy degree held by someone who did internships for at least the latter half of their education will be looked at better than a good degree holder with no experience. So, incoming college goers, intern, network, schmooze. Yeah, I think more and more places are going routes like this. Your college degree doesn't exactly mean a whole lot. Everyone wants experience. Or if you've managed to get an internship somewhere, then you've already gotten your foot in the door. Problem with internships is a lot of the time you're working for free for a while without a guaranteed job at the end of it. Unless you eat, sleep, and breathe architecture, do not even consider it as a major. You'll spend more money, more sleepless nights, and more of your sanity than any other student. Unless you have the passion necessary to make those sacrifices, forget it. Learn from my mistakes. I just finished a dual master's in architecture and urban design. Everything you said 100%, except now that I'm out and working, there was indeed light at the end of the tunnel. I feel bad talking crap about my own degree, but biomedical engineering. Maybe not avoid it, but make sure you have an idea of what you like at the beginning or early as possible, and tailor your work experience, classes, and training to that speciality. For example, if you like prosthetics, have things that show you're ready to compete with mechanical and electrical engineers over the same position, and that your biology and anatomy knowledge gives you an edge over them. All other engineers have obvious fields they can go into. Biomed is simply just not as flushed out, and employees may just pick grads with majors they fully understand. In my undergrad, I went more of the bioinformatics route and did a lot of coding, so I load up my resume with that stuff, and had 2 internships that furthered my coding ability. But would it have been easier if I just did computer engineering? Possibly. Avoid any major starting with pre-law, pre-med, anything like that. I know several people who became doctors with degrees in chemistry, biology, or engineering. I also know someone who finished pre-med, went to med school, realized he didn't want to be a doctor, and was screwed. He ended up spending 4 years getting a second bachelor's degree. Likewise, you can easily get a law degree and become a lawyer with degrees in all sorts of things. You can't do anything else with a pre-law degree. Criminal justice. I'm about 2 months away from having my AA in criminal justice, but every law enforcement professional I met said don't waste your time getting your bachelor's in criminal justice. Get it in something practical like business or engineering. So if, God forbid, something happens to you, then you have a degree in something else to fall back on. I want to be a police officer, by the way. That's the second time this one's come up. Maybe that is one to avoid. Don't do a business major if even the smallest amount of math freaks you out. Even in things that aren't accounting or finance, you'll still have to do a little bit in most entry-level positions. I feel like that one's kind of a given. If you're going to be in business, you're going to be handling numbers. Graphic design. The market is oversaturated with designers. Design is very subjective. No matter what jargon pro designers may throw at you about color theory and the golden ratio, when it comes down to you finding a job, it's all about if the employer likes what they see. The current industry is being devalued by sites like Fiverr and 99 Designs, where companies will pay pennies to get a logo or a flyer made. This makes companies not value or need in-house designers. Design agencies are very stuck up, and the culture is almost always cutthroat. The pay sucks. Depending on your city, the entry-level pay can fluctuate, but you'll be making nowhere near the money you could with other forms of education. You most likely will not be doing what you love unless you get lucky. If you become an in-house designer, be prepared to only design stuff related to whatever your company specializes in for the rest of your employment there. If you're hired at an agency, you'll have more opportunities to work on different brands, but may not be the brands you're interested in. If you don't like a crap ton of physics, or if you're not at least somewhat into it, don't go into lucrative engineering fields, because there's a very high chance you'll switch out. If you're in it only for the money, there's a big wake-up call heading for you. Again, engineering, you're going to be doing a lot of math, gotta be prepared for that. First of all, almost every major is useless if you can't show employers what you learned with it, i.e. internships, publications, research, papers and projects beyond what is expected of a college assignment, and things like that. Also, you may have the risk of making your degree useless if you want to stay in a certain area. In doing so, you're limiting your job prospects in that industry. For example, you major in art history, but there's only one art museum in the state and you don't want to leave the state. Secondly, most majors themselves have some degree of usefulness. Supposedly useless majors such as philosophy, history, and psych can be great prep for an advanced grad school degree like pre-law or other intensive writing and research degrees. Others, like English, classics, and journalism, show that you can write well, which is always valuable and can lead to jobs in copywriting, editing, and things like that. That being said, there are some degrees I would not recommend getting. Sports management for one. Coming from someone that worked at the highest levels of athletics, a sports management degree is useless. While there are jobs in sports, they just require you to grind and they're really competitive to get. I know for a fact that hiring managers don't give a crap about what degree you have, except for maybe like athletic training. They just care about your experience. So sports management itself doesn't get you hired, and it eliminates career options if a career in sports doesn't work out. It's also getting a rep that it's an easy major, in which I agree is the case with about 98% of sports management programs. Again, going to what I said earlier using the art history example, probably isn't a great idea to major in sports management if you attend a small private NAIA school in the middle of Iowa. Other useless majors include dance or ballet if you have a bad knee or back, and African American studies from North Carolina. Google UNC academic scandal. Sometimes you do need to use a little bit of common sense. I've seen a lot of people saying foreign language unless you double major. Nobody has yet mentioned that Japanese isn't a happy life, period. There's literally thousands of other Westerners pining for that English teaching job in Japan, and they treat you like dirt when you get there. I'm sure I could name like half a dozen people off the top of my head that would love a job like that. In the UK, if you can afford not to, don't do law. Many law firms I stumbled across prefer non-law rigorous degrees, linguistics, maths, and hard science, and a conversion to law afterwards. If you get good enough grades, you might be able to get your degrees for free because some firm or inn of court will pay for it. If you want to do IP law, just do science. Whatever area of science you graduate from is the area that you can do patents. Also, you can work in the patents office. If you don't want to do law, you'll always get asked the question as to why you studied law and you're not working in law, as I got when I was trying to get a job in PR. Finally, if you want to be a solicitor, forget the LPC. A new super exam came out in 2020, and you won't need to spend 10 to 20k on the LPC to qualify. You will, however, need 2 years work experience, so get that now. Again, another example, everyone just wants you to have experience. They feel you learn more from actually doing the job than from learning about the job. Don't go to college, period, unless you know what you want to do. We've been looking at this all wrong. Start with where you want to be in 10 to 15 years, and then work backwards. What's between you and that place? If college is one of those things, then go to college. Looking at it the wrong way is how we've ended up with $1 trillion in student loan debt. Don't just go to college for the sake of going to college. It would literally be cheaper to travel around the world, and you'd learn more. This is something I completely agree with. This is something I've said before too. Figure out where you want to be and work backwards from there. Then start towards your goal. Graphic design. Honestly, a decent major. Just make sure you take it somewhere you'll have passionate professors and not ones that just link you to a YouTube tutorial. It's easy to teach yourself graphic design rather than dish out like $40,000 to learn it. As someone who's currently enrolled, I definitely agree. Although there is some expectations for students to solve design problems on their own, I think. Professors can only give you the building blocks, not the answer. Second time graphic design came up, and that does sound like a really cool one to work in. Sounds like the way to go is maybe learn yourself online and just start making a portfolio. Anthropology. Last I heard, they crank out about 3,000 master's degrees a year, while there are about 300 job openings per year in the field. Most people, I would say, don't do anthropology to be an anthropologist. A relative got an anthropology degree at 45 and used it to go into financial counseling. There are no bad majors, only bad planning. Your degree doesn't matter in getting a job as much as the grades you get and the work experience you get during the summer. Of course, if you want to do an actual profession, and I mean a profession like medicine, law, or engineering, you do need the requisite degree and good grades and good work experience. Save again for the caveat above, no one really expects you to do anything with what you learned at bachelor's level. What the degree is supposed to do is advertise your abilities and skills. Whether we like it or not, employers will look at academic ability as a key indicator of how trainable and employable you are. Many people downplay the value of good internships and work experience. Yes, a lot of terrible places don't pay at all, but unfortunately, the market is that you need to have experience. You can ask, how could a history major work at an iBank? It's not what you learn from a book, but the skills, analytical, critical thinking, and things like that. It also shows good motivation, planning, and goals. I know many people who did useless degrees who were in some good, non-related jobs. What they did right was good grades, good work experience, and good planning. Unless you're getting into a specialized field, a degree is what a high school diploma was 30 years ago. I'm getting a degree in something I enjoy, philosophy, because everywhere I'd like to work requires something. I don't expect to make a lot, but I expect to make more than I would have without it. It might be easier for me to say this as a Canadian though. Tuition is only around $8,000 with textbooks where I live. My goal is to get my degree and find some office jobs until I land something I like. I just want a clock in, clock out kind of thing. It's easier to have these goals for myself though, since I don't want kids. Other people might have to be more concerned about their finances and earning potential. This is one way to handle it. You get a degree for relatively cheap that's gonna end you a job that pays you well, and you go from there until you find something that you really want to do for the rest of your life. Unless you have future plans for grad school or a specific career path you're dead set on, in my opinion, it doesn't matter. Picking something broad like sciences, econ, tech-based, or communications works great. I spent many years past 4 because I thought my major would dictate the rest of my life. It doesn't. You can always go back to community college for a class or two if you want something extra for a specific position you're applying for. Most jobs are entry level and just want to see a bachelor's degree and provide on-the-job training. Doing sales for any company requires knowledge of their specific CRM system, sales approaches, their product that you would never get a major in. One major I have had friends struggle with post-graduation job searching is English, unless they went into teaching or writing a book. If you major in the pure sciences, chem, physics, or biology, you'll have no career in your field without a PhD. And if you're smart enough to complete a PhD in those fields, you're smart enough to do something easier and better paying. I myself got off the research plantation and moved into technical sales when I realized how little of a future there was in chemistry, and my wife moved to statistics and data science. It really sucks to hear that people put in so much time and money into something that they think they're going to be passionate about for the rest of their lives, only to lose that passion or struggle to find a job, or get a job that doesn't pay enough, and they're just in crippling debt for years. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, linked at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Linked in the description as well. Either way, thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.